what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I feel like I feel like he hacked it so that he could actually hear what we're saying too.
He's garbage though. Like he's not good at all.
Yeah, he has 0 kills.
When another one lags out, we win. Like, most definitely.
I think they got what's his face?
No, Quinn, look, I'm cheesing right now. Look,
but
you don't have to sit there. No, look at me.
Stop.
Look at me. Look at what I'm doing, though.
Wait.
Quinn, look, you're gonna die if they come through the front door. I have no control over if they. I'll tell you if they're there. Why isn't this reinforced? I'm not.
Do they have a fuse?
Yeah, probably.
Freaking retard.
Team
Is anybody there?
So
I can run past?
Yeah, run. You ran! Oh,
they're in over here. They're in over here.
Fuse?
I just heard them. Over here, Dre, behind you. You might want to get up. Dre, I hope he
all
fuses.
Of this is open.
You're
back
looking
here.
stupid.
Tyler, you saw him?
No, I'm just lighting it up, hoping.
Hoping. We can't hope on Rainbow.
Pray and pray. I just saw him. He's in the back corner.
Wait a minute.
Yup. I made him run.
He's injured.
It's getting hectic.
It was getting hectic till we ended his life.
I'm gonna bait him.
I feel like they're gonna blow this hatch open from underneath me.
No, they don't have anybody.
Forget it.
We got their Habana.
One more is coming.
Dre, if you're getting shot at, lay down. Do not move to your right, because I'm behind you just in case.
I'm gonna offer him some PSN for that glitch.
Miles, shut up.
No, it's not that serious.
I mean, I don't need it, but I just wanna do it. Just one ring match, just do it. Like all of us, you know what I mean? We're cheesing.
I won't feel good though.
I know.
Like, I won't feel good if we win that ring.
We have.
And then you'll feel even worse if we lose.
If they just blow up.
I have no idea.
It's all smoky. Now I can't see the window.
What was that?
No, it was front door, but it made a whole bunch of smoke.
They tossed. I'm done.
About front door?
They're in here. Quickly.
He's right here.
I told you they were in there. He tossed at me.
I'm pistoling the last dude. Well, never mind.
Oh my god. You guys suck. You used cheats and we still won.
I'm about to send them to Sergio. I'm adding them all to a group chat. So y'all all freaking think.
Just add all of them. I'm gonna be like, wow, cheat and you still don't lose. And you still don't win.
Yeah.
Dre.
What?
How you gonna let Miles not be bottom of the barrel? I wanted to say something. You had to be bottom of the barrel by 12.
Tyler.
No, by 22.
Tyler.
I wanted to call Miles bottom of the barrel, but you were bottom of the barrel.
Tyler, I'm a stranger, you guys.
Because I said I didn't want you to be bottom of the barrel so I could say something about Miles.
I'm a stranger.
I have a 3% chance of getting...
I got a 11% chance.
Now I got a 6% chance of getting alpha. What? Yo.
I mean, once we won that.
Yo, do y'all understand we did it without Sean? 4v5.
Yeah.
Hold on.
That's like how when that's how when me, Quentin, Dre, and Maine had to play 4v5 because Sean decided he wanted to be his internet wanted to be garbage.
No, we lost because Maine sucked.
We did decent. It would have been better if Sean had garbage connection.
Decent.
Decent.
I feel like getting.
I want to figure out what that daggone glitch is.
But by the Friday.
And you know, partially why it doesn't work is because even though you have the advantage, you feel like, yeah, you can just peek and you can force on somebody like that. Okay, whatever.
So, I will get on America's Proving Ground.
No, we're on railroad right now. Then we'll get on America. Later.
What you do?
What am I making? Pancakes? Hold on.
I gotta get off. Ooh, I think I just found it. This video was posted July 7th of this year, and it's a new Valkyrie camera glitch. I just found what he was doing. Okay.
Wait, we can get our percent chances up.
What'd you say?
Winning. I said we can get our percent chances up just by winning in casual games, man. That easy.
Man, why don't we do that? Yeah, it's only on bank. The glitch is only on bank, so. Oh, I figured it out.
What?
So what you gotta do is that back door that we spawned at, where they kept running out in the back, you run out there and you throw the Valkyrie camera right over top of the gate. Do a custom game and go to yeah, make a.
I'm not the host.
I know. I need Quentin to come back so he can do a custom game. Go to bank, and then we're gonna try this, and I'm gonna see if it works. Because what you do is that back door.
What do you? Wait, what happened?
I found out the Valkyrie glitch. Okay.
How?
I looked it up on YouTube.
What? I typed in auto spot glitch and it didn't work.
I put rainbow spotting glitch, and it came up new Valkyrie camera glitch. What you do is, so you run out that back door by alley access, yeah, and then right to your left, those little buildings, you throw it right over top of the gate and it disappears, and you can spot the enemy anywhere on the map. It's really gay. That's why I'm gonna need Quentin to go to.
Can everybody change their game preferences to that map only bank?
Are we really about to be doing this the entire time? So I guess it wasn't hacks. It was just glitches. Just stupid glitches. Well, I gotta get off.
Alright.
You gotta get off?
Don't tell Quentin what the glitch is. We're just gonna, if we get on bank, me, you, and Dre, Quentin. Tyler, you hear me?
Okay.
I'm gonna meet Dre. Don't tell Quentin.
Why not? I can't turn coastline off. Oh, you have to have two of them on? Oh, I turned bank off. I can. Okay, there we go. Let's go, kid. Everybody should leave, and we should go to a custom game and try it.
You're on the count, it's gonna be completely dark. But now you can spot the enemies wherever they are.
Oh, so the camera's gonna be completely dark.
Quentin, let's go on. Let's play bank and see if other people are doing the glitch. Let's go on bank and see if other people.
What do you mean?
Quentin, like, let's put your spawn preferences on bank.
I mean, Tyler's getting off, so.
Yeah, but put your spawn preferences on bank. I want to see if other people are doing the glitch on rank.
got a freaking comment. I don't even want to open it.
Quentin, you need to do a custom game and go to bank. We need to figure this out.
Tyler, don't you have to get off?
Good job, Tyler. But listen, well, you, Quentin, then tell me where do I throw it?
Tyler.
Tyler gotta get off.
Wait, Quentin, I'll tell you. Wait.
How about we just go to custom game?
That's what I said! You idiot! Miles.
What?
So, you know that back door by Alley Access? That you run out of? Where Caviera came at me from? You run out there and right to your left. So you run out, you turn to your left. That building wall that's right in front of you. You toss the Valkyrie right over top of the gate. It might take you a couple times to do it. But once you get it, it disappears. And then when you open the camera, it's pitch black. But when you spot, you can, spot anybody. Anywhere.
Okay. Alright.
Hey, Tyler, why you gotta get off so early?
No, I have to get off to read.
You gotta get off what?
To read da.
He said he gotta read?
Yes.
Read what?
To Kill a Mockingbird.
You were reading To Kill a Mockingbird? We read that last year.
Ew,
we read it last year too, but for some reason they're making us do that for summer reading.
Oh, you gotta read.
I have to do that too, but I haven't started yet. I haven't told my mom.
I used to have to do that when I was little.
Is it mandatory?
Yeah.
Dang. I don't got no
we have to do that because we have to do a bunch of stuff on it, and it's, what is it? It counts for like 100-something points as an assessment grade.
Dang. I don't got no summer work.
Alright, Tyler, alright.
Of course you don't, Quinn.
No summer work.
Tyler, back out, hurry up.
I am.
Tyler, back out. You gotta go.
I am. I just said I am. Throw anything. I went like this. With the remote. What? No, I don't know what that is. Star Trek?
Yeah, but on regular TV?
Oh, that? Yeah, it's on regular TV. We're doing the next two chapters. 24, 25. About 12 pages. It's about 12 pages, so if there's not a lot.
Say that again. 12 pages of 2 chapters?
Yes.
Just 12 pages?
That's why when you told me I had to do 2 and I did 4, it was because all of them were less than like 6. I think one was 6, one was 5. Because they don't, one's 8, one's 4, I think the next one's like 10.
So whatever you say.
Where's the paper?
Oh, right here. You gotta continue on that one?
No, let's finish this one.
Okay, so wait. But I mean, you gotta continue writing on that one.
Yeah.
You know where that paper is, right?
Hmm?
You know where that paper is if you need it anymore. You do? You do? You do. Okay.
Can you explain why? Well, Trump is a guy who has betrayed contractors, customers, vendors, and wives. His entire career is a long train of betrayals. And so why Sessions should think he's different and special is a mystery. He should have been more aware of Trump's history. Like, I'm Trump. What does loyalty mean to Trump? Not very much. It flows in one direction, toward him.
You have to be loyal to him.
Absolutely, and everything's transactional, so if you've done one thing wrong, if you don't demonstrate a reversal the next day, you're out. You know,
business is different, but every one of those businesses will need legal.
He's a fair weather friend. He's a coward. This is a guy who won't stand by the people he's made a commitment to and who have made a commitment to him. But, this is nothing new about him. He, as Jack said, wasn't loyal to two wives. He's now on his third. I think he's doing pretty well there. But he stiffed thousands of bondholders who invested in Trump casinos, all these contractors, the people who signed up for Trump University, one after another. I mean, political parties. He was in the Reform Party, then he was a Republican, then he was a Democrat, now he's a Republican again. Where is the loyalty here? I think it all runs in one direction.
And Jack, is this just politics, though? Is anyone in politics, when push comes to shove, truly loyal? Isn't almost everything based on self-interest or furthering a political agenda?
Well, in politics, there is a sense of loyalty. You stick with a party. You stick with commitments. And in the places where I've worked, in Albany...
President of the United States to present a check for $100,000.
That's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. A winner.
We may have added some sound effects there. As NBC's Peter Alexander pointed out, there's a pretty stark contradiction to this public spectacle.
As you just announced, the president's donating his second quarter salary of $100,000 to the Department of Education, so clearly he must care about education. Why then is he calling for $9.2 billion in spending cuts to the Department of Education in the next budget?
Look, I think that oftentimes you have a lot of duplicative efforts, and they want to streamline the process.
Salonpas, we're the world leader in medicinal.
And say, well, I want some of that.
He had not only a secure seat, he also had seniority as a senator.
He had a secure seat, he had seniority, he had more of what Donald Trump wanted than what Donald Trump could give to him. And so the president very eagerly accepted Sessions' endorsement, paraded him around the South, really around the whole country. And I would argue that a lot of people voted for President Trump because of the endorsement of Jeff Sessions. So now we see this playing out in Congress with the former senator, now the Attorney General, getting lots of support.
And Michael, the irony of this is, Jeff Sessions, not only early on was the first senator to support Trump, but ideologically is probably more kind of ideologically connected to the president than a lot of the people the president had around him. A lot of the people the president has around him now were campaign officials for other candidates.
Well, Donald Trump doesn't care about Trumpism. He only cares about Donald Trump. The principles, the ideology, the policies, none of that matters to him. All that matters is his interest. And that's what we're seeing with his policy standpoint. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Michael D'Antonio, thanks. Still to come. She was a Navy SEAL for more than 20 years, then left them. We'll speak with Kristen Beck about today's ban by the president next.
When heartburn hits, fight back fast with new Tums Chewy Bites. Fast relief in every bite. Crunchy outside, chewy inside. New Tums Chewy Bites. Steve was born to move. Over the course of 9 days, he walks 26.2 miles. That's a marathon. Because he chooses to walk whenever he can. And he does it with support from Dr. Scholl's. Only Dr. Scholl's has massaging gel insoles that provide all-day comfort to keep him feeling more energized. So he even has the energy to take the long way home. Keep it up, Steve. Dr. Scholl's, born to move. It's our Men's Warehouse buy one get one free sale on many great looks now. Plus, expert stylists will help you find your best look. And select suits are just $1.99. Men's Warehouse, you're gonna like the way you look. I needed something more to help control my type 2 diabetes.
My A1C wasn't where it needed to be. So I liked when my doctor told me that I may reach my blood sugar and A1C goals by activating what's within me with once-weekly Trulicity.
Trulicity is not insulin. It helps activate my body to do what it's supposed to do. Release its own insulin.
I take it once a week and it works 24/7. It comes in an easy-to-use pen and I may even lose a little weight. Trulicity is a once-weekly injectable prescription medicine to improve blood sugar in adults with type 2 diabetes when used with diet and exercise. Trulicity is not insulin. It should not be the first medicine to treat diabetes or for people with type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Do not take Trulicity if you or a family member has had medullary thyroid cancer, if you've had multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2, or if you are allergic to Trulicity. Stop Trulicity and call your doctor right away if you have a lump or swelling in your neck, severe pain in your stomach, or symptoms such as itching, rash, or trouble breathing. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis, which can be fatal. Taking Trulicity with a sulfonylurea or insulin increases your risk for low blood sugar. Common side effects include nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, decreased appetite, and indigestion. Some side effects can lead to dehydration, which may make existing kidney problems worse.
Once weekly Trulicity may help me reach my blood sugar goals. With Trulicity, I click to activate what's within me.
If you want help improving your A1C and blood sugar, activate your within. Ask your doctor about once weekly Trulicity.
Well, we have no details from the White House about how the ban the president announced on Twitter today will affect the thousands of transgender military members who are currently serving. There's been no explanation. What we can do is speak to people who have served and served honorably, heroically. We've known Kristen Beck for a while now. She was a member of the Navy's elite SEAL team for more than 2 decades, earning a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. She left the military in 2011, later came out as transgender. We did a documentary about her journey back in 2014. Here's a quick clip. It's got to be so, it's sad to think that for 20 years you have to, that you have this incredible bond with these people you're fighting with, and you want it to be the closest bond imaginable, and yet you can't really let yourself be yourself.
It's definitely tough. It's, and we say it's strength and honor. It's like one of the ones that we do. When we shake hands, we shake hands and we say strength and honor. And that's still what I gave True. I gave True brotherhood. I did my best, 150% all the time. And I gave strength and honor and my full brotherhood to every military person I ever worked with.
I spoke with Kristen Beck just before airtime tonight. Kristen, the White House press secretary was repeatedly asked what will happen to those transgender members currently serving if they would be forced out, and she couldn't answer that question. I know you have transgender friends who are currently serving. What are they saying right now? Do they know what's going to happen?
I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen. I mean, you see as they keep talking, all the heads of staff and every staff for every branch of the military are totally blindsided. So this is unusual for such a major policy shift.
What is the impact, you think, for those service members who are transgender, who are serving and have been serving honorably?
Well, just like you said just then, they've been serving honorably. They've been in war zones, back and forth a few times, a few of them. They're my friends. Those are the people who are served on the front lines of American freedom and liberty. And now they're going to be told that they're going to be rejected and unworthy to serve. I mean, it's a huge slap in the face, and they have contracts. So there's going to be a lot of repercussions. And you think it's expensive to pay for a few things for these individuals? This is going to get really expensive really fast.
The president's tweet today read in part that the military, quote, cannot be burdened with the tremendous medical costs and disruption that transgender in the military would entail. What do you think would taking transgender military members out of the service actually look like? I mean, talk about disruption, to use the president's word.
You use the exact word. I mean, it's disruption. I have one particular friend who is in the Army, and she speaks Farsi, Arabic, and about 5 other languages. And she's been in a war zone a couple of times. And back and forth, she's immensely capable. How are you going to replace that person? All that experience and all those language skills? And I can give you dozens and dozens of counts of people with that kind of experience. If you had me right now serving in the military, you can't replace a senior chief. You can't replace all that experience. It's a very difficult replacement. So you're talking about some huge disruptions.
The president, according to the White House press secretary, concluded that having transgendered individuals in the military, quotes, erodes military readiness and unit cohesion. That's a quote. I wonder what your reaction to that. I mean, that's an argument that's been made, frankly, for, whether or not to have African Americans serving in the military, and then whether to have openly gay people serving in the military, gay and lesbian people. So does it affect unit cohesion?
Well, you brought up the exact point. I mean, this was the 1950s, going back to segregation. You're going into don't ask, don't tell era. I mean, nothing ever happened. When we integrated the military and everything was it's better. That diversity makes us stronger. That diversity is what we need. So it's the same thing. these are excuses. It's something's going on, and has nothing to do with cohesion, readiness, or their capability. It's nothing to do with that.
I mean, undoubtedly there are members of the military who are not comfortable having transgendered individuals serving with them. When you were serving, you weren't open to your fellow SEALs. What do you say to those who say, well, look, if some members of the military are upset about it, then it is going to affect cohesion?
Well, and that's the thing that they're overlooking is, what really is at that lowest level, at that company or platoon level. Once you start serving with us folks, and if you sit around me just for a couple of hours, let's go out on a range, we'll do a little bit of planking, do some shooting. You're going to find that I'm the same person. They're basing their data, they're basing their emotions on misinformation. They're basing their emotions on a fantasy fest parade with the person in a pink boa. That's one picture of transgender, but transgender is also me. Transgender is this picture. So don't base all your data on one thing. I'm transgender. I'm capable of serve. I can serve right now, and I would do it, with great capabilities that would surprise you. That they're giving up a lot, and it's a catastrophe.
Christian Beck, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next tonight, the latest from the White House on this transgender ban and more.
I didn't know where I was from ethnically, so we sent that sample off to Ancestry. My Ancestry DNA results are that I'm 26% Nigerian. I'm just trying to learn as much as I can about my culture. I put the gele on my head, and I looked into the mirror, and I was trying not to cry, because it's a hat, but it's like the most important hat I've ever owned.
Discover the story only your DNA can tell. Order your kit now at AncestryDNA.com.
Dunkirk is the #1 movie in the world. Dunkirk. Playing. Rated PG-13.
When it comes to heartburn, trust the brand doctors trust. Nexium 24 Hour is the #1 choice of doctors and pharmacists for their own frequent heartburn and all-day, all-night protection. When it comes to heartburn, trust Nexium 24 Hour.
So your new prescription does have a few side effects.
Oh, like what?
You're gonna have dizziness, nausea, and sweaty eyelids, and in severe cases, chronic flatulence. So gassy, girl. So gassy.
If you're Boyz II Men, you make anything sound good. It's what you do. If you want to save 15% or more on car insurance, you switch to Geico. It's what you do.
Next.
Next.
Now at the Honda Summerbration sales event, you can get a great deal on the Honda Accord. Then go out and have all sorts of summer adventures. A summer of fun awaits at the Honda Summerbration sales event. Hurry in and get a great deal on the Honda Accord from KBB.com's best value brand. Today at your local Honda dealer.
Don't be afraid. Come on, Mr. Camera. We're going crazy. Come on.
I do believe we are susceptible a little bit to madness. You have that kind of brain, you can go dark real fast.
If you're a comedian, there's a part of you that is unhinged.
Drugs and alcohol have led to some amazing comedy, but in the end, the drugs and alcohol always beat art.
Sometimes comedy is no laughing matter. Spark of Madness, the history of comedy.
Sunday night at 10 on CNN.
Impressive performance and seating for 7. Lease the all-wheel drive QX60 for $439 a month, or finance at 1.9% APR at your Philadelphia area Infinity Retail.
Today, we spend a whole lot of time like this. So at Citizens Bank, we've created banking tools that fit how you're living today. From advanced ATMs, to online banking, to our award-winning mobile app. And if you prefer face-to-face, we had that too. Ask me Terry Goggins, how our balance of technology and people can help you.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Well, as has so often been the case in the Trump presidency, today's story is told in tweets. There were some similarities in this morning's tweet storm to recent days. Another attack on Attorney General Jeff Sessions, for instance. We'll talk about that throughout the hour. But there was one big difference, a policy announcement that transgender people would be banned from serving in the military. No public announcement, no explanation as to how it's going to affect currently serving troops. Just 3 tweets and nothing but the tweets. Jeff Zelony's at the White House with the latest. What do we really know about this ban, other than what was tweeted?
Anderson, that's about all we know about the ban this evening. I mean, the president sent out those, urgent messages earlier this morning saying, look, the military service will not be allowed, any transgendered member of the service will not be allowed to be an active member of the military. But beyond that, it was left at that. Just to give you a window into how things work here at the White House, there were background briefings today on what's going on in Venezuela. There was a background briefing from administration officials on what is going on with the job announcement in Wisconsin. Anderson, for a major policy change like this, there was not a single background briefing. The administration officials we talked to were, quite frankly, caught off guard by this. They could not answer basic questions of what happens to those active members of the military who are transgendered individuals who may be serving in Afghanistan or elsewhere. So just in perspective, it was clear that this was an announcement that happened abruptly. It took people here by surprise, on Capitol Hill by surprise, and certainly at the Pentagon by surprise.
Do we know which generals, if any, the president actually consulted about this? Because he says in one of his tweets that this came about after consultation with his generals.
The president says his generals a lot, and some people actually in the military bristle by the words his generals. They're the military's generals. But Anderson, we do not know which generals he's talking about. This has been discussed in meetings and other things with the National Security Advisor as part of the military readiness, but it was not on anyone's radar necessarily until this morning. So again, it took people by surprise. But there was at the White House briefing today, incoming new press secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders simply did not have the answers to the questions about what the next steps of these policies are or who these generals were. So Anderson, for such a big policy decision, such a big announcement, it was very small in the details.
So if you're transgender and you're currently serving in the military, I mean, obviously you're wondering today, what does this mean for your position? Are you going to get fired? Are you going to get removed? What's going to happen?
It's a great question. It's a question that went unanswered today. Imagine if you're a transgendered Marine or soldier or airman, in a Kabul or Erbil. There was no specific answer to what happens. But there is an interesting reaction, I think, on Capitol Hill. Senator John McCain, of course, back in Washington, battling brain cancer, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, he said, look, an announcement of this magnitude should not be done by Twitter. He also said any able-bodied, legal American who wants to serve their country should be able to do so. So, Anderson, as this goes forward here, I expect considerable pushback on Capitol Hill as this is decided. This may be President Trump's version of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but it's a slightly different time from, more than 2 decades ago here. So this is not the end of this today. I think it's the beginning of a long discussion here.
Jeff Zeleny, thanks a lot to talk about with Dana Bash, Scott Jennings, Charles Blow, Alice Stewart, and Christine Quinn. Charles, I mean, is this to you just about politics, about diversion from whether it's the Russia investigation or Jeff Sessions or red meat to the base because he's being criticized by folks from the base about Sessions?
It seems like, it could be all of that. We don't know. He didn't make a public statement about this. But in any case, you look at it both ways, right? Either this is just something that he felt really passionate about and he wanted to do, which is an incredible thing to do to those servicemen. Or if it is, in fact, a diversion, he's willing to play with those people's lives. There, right now, thousands of transgender people putting their life on the line for this country. Even the explanations that he offers in the tweets about you being a burden, that we can't pay for the medical care. If those thousands of people are already receiving medical attention that they will need and require, already, it's already baked in, right? This idea of like bathrooms that people keep bringing up, they're already going to the bathroom. Like, all that's just a canard. The Rand Corporation has studied this, found that it would have a minimal impact, both in readiness and in cost. They're already there. And these are not, we sometimes think about military deployment as people just thinking, I'm going to go for 2 years and I'm going to leave. I'm going to go for 4 years and I'm going to leave and go to college. A lot of people make the military their career. That is all they do. That is what they wanted to do. LGBT people are just like everybody else. They're patriotic, just like everybody else. Some of them want to serve the military, just like everybody else. To tell them, and particularly this president, who received 5 draft deferments, to tell somebody else who volunteers to go, sir, that you can't do it, it's just outrageous to me. Scott,
well, I'm not a military strategist. I did talk to an old friend of mine today who's been in the military for 21 years, and he did say there are some legitimate people on the ground in the military who would say there are readiness issues that are wrapped up in this. But I tend to look at the world through the issue of politics. I'm a political strategist. So these issues around transgender rights, the transgender bathroom issue from the last election, this is at the core of what I think is the defining moment in our politics right now. The massive chasm that has opened up between rural and urban America. Today on this decision, the outrage from urban America is what we're hearing, and what you're hearing privately from rural America is, I think the president was right about this. And I think this is all wrapped up in what we're seeing in the two parties. One party in the last election identified with non-urban America, and one party identified almost exclusively inside urban America. And issues like this help explain it, and I think issues like this really help explain Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio.
So given the fact that the president is from urban America and during the campaign talked a lot about, you know, equal rights for all citizens and talked about the LGBT community, is this then just about politics? I mean, it sounds like you're saying this is, one way to look at what you're saying is that's a play at the base.
Well, it's about politics if you consider that even though the president's from urban America, the reason he's in the White House is not urban America.
Right, sure.
And if you went to that rally last night in Ohio, and there were a lot of Democrats there, and you asked any one of them about this decision today, I bet you wouldn't find too many objections.
But we can't start believing that LGBT people don't exist in the South.
Exactly.
And that they don't exist in rural America. I'm from rural America in the South. The majority of parents, gay parents of children, do not live in San Francisco, do not live in New York. They live in the South. And the part of that reason is because they delay coming out. They get married first or have relationships first, and they end up having kids, but then they come out later. But they stay there. They don't try to escape. The raging HIV epidemic right now is not happening in New York. It's not happening in San Francisco. It's happening in the South. The idea that they don't exist there is just not true.
I think I might be the only one at this table, maybe besides you, who's been at a Trump rally and went to lots of them during the campaign. And I think that your point is dead on about when Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania changed from blue to red, some of it was just people couldn't articulate it, but it was the country was moving and changing way too fast and faster than and it was a country that they didn't recognize, and that whether it was gay rights or other things that contributed to it. However, having said that, on the flip side, you have a lot of public servants who, just like John McCain 7 years ago, was against the Don't Ask, Don't Tell bill, and he's for that.
I think Scott's point is totally accurate about the divide, but isn't then this just a wedge issue that's being used to stoke that divide? I mean,
by the President of the United States. I mean, it is bad when any politician does that, or any, quote-unquote leader in America. That's bad, and it's dangerous. I used to run a crime victims agency. After hate like this gets put out, we would see hate crimes rise against the LGBT community. You could track it. But this is the president. He should never be throwing entire groups of Americans under the bus and saying they're less than other people.
I'm taking this off.
She should be the one who's bridging the divide, closing the chasm, bringing us together. And this is the opposite for pure political gain. Leadership in elected officials is defined by being a leader. All the president
president here is doing is playing, you know, to the cheap seats and doesn't care at all who he hurts. And make no mistake, transgender children are one of the highest suicide groups in the country, so to speak. This will make transgender children go to sleep feeling less than, and God knows what will happen. And let me just say lastly, God forbid there's some type of military tragedy today or in the next few days. One of the last things transgender service members might have heard from their commander-in-chief is that they are unworthy. That is un-American and a goddamn disgrace.
Here's the thing. The cheap seats, as you refer to them, are conservative voices that have been silenced for the last 8 years. President Obama and his transgender policies are no longer in effect. We have a new president here, and he is changing those policies. How we got to this point is we have conservatives that have represented these states that helped elect the president. To Scott's point, Vicky Hartzler in Missouri. We have others, Mark Meadows in North Carolina, members of the Values Action Team, conservatives who are representing and listening to the voices of the people in their states, and they are saying, we don't want to pay for this types of procedures for our military. We're not going to support an appropriations bill that uses money that way. We're not going to. This is not going to pass. And they are speaking out.
There's reporting. I think it was Axios reporting today that that this originated as this argument in the House over paying for transition surgery for transgender service members among some Republicans, and they approached the president about it. The president has gone far beyond the idea of should surgeries be paid for.
And Deirdre Walsh reported that as well. That on Capitol Hill, it was about in the short term, it was about the money for the taxpayer money that could be or couldn't be used for surgeries and for transitioning. And then all of a sudden they looked up and saw the president tweeting about a complete reversal.
The other question is, regardless of what you think about the policy or something, there's just the issue of the procedural way the president went about doing. Is this the most effective way? Well, we got to take a break, but let's talk about that when we come back. We're going to continue the conversation. Also hear what Senator Tammy Duckworth told me tonight about her military service and the president's lack thereof. And later, just what is the president's strategy when it comes to his attorney general? Another day, another tweet. Is there another shoe about to drop? We'll talk about that now.
At Panera, a salad is so much more than one thing. More than one flavor, or texture, or color. A good, clean salad is so much more than green. And with Panera Catering, more for your event. Panera, food as it should be.
So you miss the big city?
I don't miss much. Definitely not the traffic.
Excuse me, doctor. The genomic data came in.
Thank you.
Use of clinical and scientific reports to help you tailor treatment.
You can do that. Even way out here.
Yes, even way out here. You have a vision. It's behind everything you do. It comes through. You know what you want, and we can help make it real. You need choices? We've got all kinds. And they're all absolutely guaranteed. Because you have a vision, and we have your card. 500 start at just $9.99 when you enter BC500 at Vistaprint.com.
Your ancestors preserved and prepared, and now there's a better way. With the Harvest Right Home Freeze Dryer, you can preserve all your favorite foods for up to 25 years. Meats, fruits, vegetables, dairy, and complete meals can be easily freeze-dried right in your home, retaining their original fresh taste and nutrition. To order your Harvest Right Home Freeze Dryer, call us today or visit harvestright.com. Harvest Right. Long live your food.
What's the value of capital? What's critical thinking worth? A basketball costs $14. What's team spirit worth? What's it worth to talk to your mom? What's the value of a walk in the woods? The value of capital is to create not just wealth, but things that matter. Morgan Stanley.
The average traveler visits loads of different websites before booking their hotel. That's fair enough. You want to make sure you get a great hotel for the best price. There are so many websites out there. How can you visit them all? Well, before you book, check on Trivago. Trivago instantly compares prices from more than 250 websites and apps. And that's how Trivago finds your ideal hotel for the best price. Hotel Trivago.
You don't let anything keep you sidelined. That's why you drink Ensure with 9 grams of protein and 26 vitamins and minerals. For the strength and energy to get back to doing what you love. Ensure, always be you.
You're meeting with new clients today. Problem is, you're terrible with names. There's Pam, Donnie, Comet, and Blitzen. Wait, pretty sure those last two are reindeer. Nice to see you, Fabitha. Is that even a real name? Okay, this is the boss. You got this. Anna! Yes! Oh, thank goodness for name tags. New clients? We've been there. And with breakfast on the run, we'll be there for you. Book direct for a guaranteed discount. Hampton by Hilton.
President Trump's surprise ban on transgender military service members has gotten swift reaction from some veterans, some of whom now serve in Congress. Earlier tonight, I spoke with Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth, who was a lieutenant colonel in the Army and whose Black Hawk helicopter was shot down in Iraq. She lost her legs, partial use of her arm, earned a Purple Heart. When I spoke with her, she noted that the president had never served in the military and had this to say.
When I was bleeding to death in my helicopter after that RPG ripped through the cockpit of the aircraft, and an American came to save my life, it didn't matter to me if they were gay, if they were straight, if they were transgendered. It only mattered that they wore the uniform of the United States military. And I will always remember that. If you're willing to serve this country in uniform and you're willing to lay down your life to protect it, you deserve to be able to do that. And so many more Americans, including our president, has never worn the uniform, and he just needs to back off, because I will stand up and fight for our transgender and all of our military men and women.
Well, the ban came as a surprise to many people in Washington, including, we're learning, the conservatives who lobbied the White House on transgender policy. They say they were pushing to prevent the Pentagon from paying for transgender-related surgery, not for an outright ban on transgender people in the military. Back now with the panel. Scott, just in terms of how the president, I mean, putting aside whether you agree or not with the idea of a ban, just how the president went about it, it is a major policy change from the previous administration. The previous administration basically encouraged, by allowing this, encouraged transgender people in the military who were hidden to come forward and identify themselves. Now, people have done that, and it seems like they're going to be fired. Is 3 tweets the way this should have been handled?
Well, probably not, and I think at this point the White House needs to bring forward a cabinet officer, a military advisor, or advisors to give a briefing to the press on A, how it's going to be handled right now, and B, how it's going to be handled in the future. C, what does this mean? Is there a time period under which we're going to enact this? And finally, how they arrived at the decision. What were the policy discussions that went on to get to the decision? Back to the politics for just one moment. One thing we didn't discuss in the first segment, but I think is important. There's really only one transgendered soldier anybody in America knows, and that's the traitor, Chelsea Manning. And you wonder how this conversation would have unfolded today if Chelsea Manning had not done what she did, leaking all the information, putting American soldiers and allies at risk. If that hadn't happened, we might be having a different conversation today.
But that's the thing that happens to most minority groups. You transfer the sin of one to the sin, make it the sin of all, and that is wrong to do. In addition to that, there is no hierarchy of humanity. This idea that we are somehow assigning these people to some sort of lesser way of being, and therefore we can now decide as a political matter or as a vote, or that we have the ability to govern their bodies, govern the way that they articulate themselves in the world, is just outright wrong. And in addition to that, I just have to bring up this point. This is the 69th anniversary of President Harry Truman signing an executive order to desegregate the military. On that day, this president would make these tweets basically moving backward, away from more integration, a more openness, more honesty in the military, and in the other direction. He stands in stark contrast in historical terms to other presidents. And so for him to stand up last night and say, I deserve to be on Mount Rushmore. No, you may deserve to be behind some bars somewhere, but you do not deserve to be on Mount Rushmore.
But what's interesting about that, I mean, just the, I don't know if it's an irony that this is done on the same day of that anniversary, but some of those arguments, the same arguments about unit cohesion, this is going to be upsetting. This is social policy by allowing African Americans to
We heard it, African Americans. We heard it with women in the military and in combat, etc. We heard it with LGBT, lesbian and gay people around Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We hear it every time there's an attempt to move the military forward to be fully embracing of who Americans are, and it's the same arguments at their core characterizations, groups, etc. changed, but they're the same. And I just want to add, on top of all of the other things that were wrong about these tweets and this decision, it's yet another issue where President Trump is just a complete hypocrite. He said during the campaign that he stood with the LGBT community. As we saw earlier on your show, he literally just about wrapped himself in a rainbow flag, saying the gays and the lesbians loved him.
That he was holding upside down, by the way.
Correct. But, that's a whole level, another level we can't possibly go into. But how do you do that? How do you're so political, you'll bring people in by lying to them, and then wake up, and as Trump said, say they're basically less than other human Americans.
Here's the thing. I will be the first one to say, from a communication standpoint, this rollout for such a major policy initiative was not done properly. All these questions that we're still talking about and were brought up in the press briefing today, they should have rolled those out.
They had no answers.
There are no answers, and they certainly should have had some military people up there going forward. But that being said, he didn't make this decision in a vacuum. He had a lot of conservatives who actually take issue to the comparison of desegregation of the military with the LGBT issue. They see those as two completely different issues. They look at LGBT and using our tax dollars for services that they need. Conservatives and the religious right and the people across the country in mainstream America take issue with that, and that was the impetus for them even bringing this up with him and why he made this decision.
It's interesting, though, that just the degree to which things have changed. I mean, as I came of age during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell time, and even before that during the ban, there were, back to Scott's point about we don't know haven't seen many transgendered service members publicly, except, Chelsea Manning. It was the same way with gay service members. When I was a kid, you didn't see many gay service members. There were a few in the 70s who I remember reading about, but whose names we knew, and it wasn't until people started coming forward that actually began to change.
I just want to pick up on one thing you said, Alice. I think, are there people who supported racial desegregation in the military who oppose this? I'm sure there are some. But I think it's very careful that I want to be very clear that people shouldn't misinterpret what you said. I don't think it's what you meant, but to in any way say that the leadership of the African American and Caribbean American and Latino American community does not stand squarely with the LGBT community and the transgender community, because we have seen that those communities come together in the most powerful ways. Leaders of the 60s civil rights movement who stood with King standing at the gay marriage rally on the mall speaking out. So there may be one or two. I'm not saying you can't find an example. But in reality, we are together in a fight for human rights.
And because I've done research on this, the language is literally exactly the same. Exactly the same. That black people were genetically in not fight, right? That you could not expend the same amount of energy and therefore time and money on them as you would other soldiers. Right. So they didn't train them the same way. My grandfather fought in World War II, was the first person to receive a medal from his group, but that racist commander of that group refused to approve any of those people who got injured on that trip. It was the same language. So I'm just saying, they may resist the comparison, but the comparison is legitimate.
But I totally get that. Let me just say this one quick thing. From a conservative standpoint, in their religious right, they view this completely different, and everyone has a different opinion. They view this as you were born black, that's how you were born and raised, but they view transgender and LGBTQ, a lot of these issues, as a choice. I'm just saying, I'm not saying I agree with it, I'm saying that's how Christian conservatives, a lot of them, view that issue.
Just a postscript to a discussion we had last hour when Jeffrey Lord said the military shouldn't pay for Viagra. CNN military analyst General Mark Hertling emailed with a good point that studies show that sexual dysfunction is actually a major problem for many soldiers who suffer from PTSD, and there's also a lot of host of other medical reasons people might be issued Viagra in the military. Much more to discuss ahead, including the president's latest Twitter attack on his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. He's not backing down. The question is why? What happens next? I'll talk it over with Maine Senator Angus King. Also want to get the panel's take as well.
A rich guy from New York dazzles middle America.
A guy that in gold-plated toilets is talking to blue-collar workers.
He reached them. I am your voice. Because he was them.
Donald Trump was John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever.
Even if some of us missed it.
Let's be clear. Donald Trump will lose the election. I won. I became president.
Join CNN's Fareed Zakaria for CNN's special report, Why Trump Won, Monday night at 10.
At Wayfair.com, we think that when the big stuff ships free, it's just better.
Cover better, crunch better, lock better, roll better, better, clean better. Yeah, better! Oh, Wayfair has free shipping. Game changer. Fast better, free better, everything's better when it's free shipping.
Orders over $49. Shop better at Wayfair.com.
Wayfair, you've got just what I need.
Your father and I are looking for a new car.
Car shopping. You're gonna need a guru.
You can't own the deal until you own you. Are you ready to own you?
Not that kind of guru. Car gurus. Car gurus analyzes everything from price and vehicle history to dealer reputation, then shows you the best deals from top-rated dealers.
Feel the deal, Alice.
Car Gurus. Search 5 million cars in about 5 seconds. Find great deals at cargurus.com.
There is a reason you've never heard the truth.
What happened at the motel?
Behind one of the most terrifying events in American history.
Police was there. There was a lot of shooting.
On August 4th, the writer and director of The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30.
I'm trying to help here.
Don't say another word. Will reveal what really happened.
I told you what I saw. What happened at the motel?
It's not that simple.
Detroit, rated R. In select theaters Friday.
If you just signed that first
I'm so sorry. I don't feel comfortable signing that.
I don't get the math here.
Was this the same car we talked about?
What's this dealer preparation thing?
I'm so sorry. This just is not.
What we talked about.
Without the car salesman. Carvana.com, the better way to buy a car.
Something is happening outside. Peter Arnett, join me here. Let's describe to our viewers what we're seeing. The skies over Baghdad have been illuminated. We're seeing bright flashes going off all over the sky.
The terrorist called the Unabomber is planning to blow up an airliner sometime during the next 6 days.
Kaczynski's got an IQ of 168. An operation of this scale is unprecedented.
He's been outsmarting us the whole time.
On Unabomber, an 8-episode event starts Tuesday at 9 on Discovery and the Discovery Go app.
Uh-oh, it's back.
Terror on the tummy time!
Persistent diarrhea, stomach pain, and bloating.
Time's up, big man!
You've tried everything. But no matter what you do, your stomach issues just keep coming back.
Party's over! Ooh, we're going up.
But there's a diagnosis that may not have been considered. Learn more at whatamIwrestlingwith.com. The most trusted name in news.
The president is not backing down from his one-sided feud with his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. He attacked him yet again on Twitter today. Earlier, I spoke with Maine Senator Angus King about that. We started off focusing on the president's other tweets today about the transgender ban and how the heads of the military branches were apparently caught off guard by the decision. We also learned Defense Secretary Mattis did know about the president's decision after he made it, but before he went public with it. Here's my conversation with Senator King. Senator King, I want to start by asking you about breaking news tonight. The service chiefs who represent the 4 branches of our military were caught off guard by the president's announcement today on transgendered service members. You're on the Armed Services Committee. How concerning is that to you?
Well, it's concerning because he mentioned in his tweet some reference to the generals, and I think it's a fair question who he was consulting with, because there's an ongoing study on this issue, and everybody was surprised, including John McCain and Joni Ernst, members of the Armed Services Committee, along with me. So, yeah, I think the White House should be asked, who did he consult with?
Do you believe that transgendered service members cause disruption, that it hurts military readiness, that it's an undue burden or expense?
Well, number one, that's exactly what's now being studied. Number two, there was a study on this subject a couple of years ago by the Rand Corporation, and they found that there wasn't substantial either disruption or additional expense. My reaction immediately when I saw the tweets was, if we've got brave people that want to defend this country, they should be allowed to do so.
So the White House wouldn't say what happens to service members who are transgender, who are currently serving. Do you have any idea? And is there anything that your committee would do to try to, I don't know, review this or prevent a ban, if it's possible, from going into effect?
I'm sure the committee is going to follow up on this. There's no question of that. And I mean, again, the problem here is policy by tweet. There was no detail, there was no explanation, there was no background, no sources, and I just think it's not a very good way to make public policy. And yes, we are going to look into it, but to simply announce something like this with no consultation with the committee, I can assure you of that. And apparently, well, I won't say apparently no consultation with the Pentagon, but I understand today the Pentagon was referring questions to the White House.
As far as your former colleague, Attorney General Sessions, is concerned, the president continued to publicly criticize him today. What do you think he is trying to accomplish by doing that?
Well, first let me say, the nub of this seems to be the Attorney General's recusing himself early on in his tenure, and there's absolutely no question, Anderson, under the regulations of the Justice Department that he had to do so. If you're investigating a political campaign of which you were a staff member or somehow otherwise involved, you have to recuse yourself. If you read it, you say, oh, well, this sounds like it was written for this situation, so he had to recuse himself. I don't know the motivation. It doesn't make sense to me, because this is a guy who was one of President Trump's most loyal supporters. The supposition is that this is an effort to somehow line up the ducks in such a way that Robert Mueller can be fired. Boy, I think that would be a terrible mistake, both for the country and the president.
If the president did end up firing Mueller, I mean, what would actually happen? Can you see a special prosecutor statute being passed?
I could. I think.
What would that mean exactly?
Well, I think what would have to do would be the Congress would have to pass a statute authorizing a special prosecutor in some kind of appointment process by veto-proof majorities, and then we'd be exactly where we are now without the president having the power to make this kind of decision. Nobody in our country is above the law. I mean, that's been established for, since the very beginning, and that includes the President of the United States. But I think you'd have a pretty strong consensus around here that firing of Robert Mueller is not something that could be just said, okay, we're going to move on from here.
Angus King, Senator King, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Back now with the panel. I mean, Dan, again, this continues. I mean, obviously the president believes there's some benefit for him to do this. It's not a complete impulse.
I don't know.
Lack of impulse control.
I honestly don't know if that's true.
Really? You don't think it's a strategic...
I don't know. But I think it's entirely possible and plausible that it is his impulse, that he is so mad at this guy, that he wants him to go, and he doesn't want to fire him, which is a whole different, no question. There's a lot of criticism of the president among his fellow Republicans on Capitol Hill for, the way that he's basically trying to bully Jeff Sessions into quitting instead of just, he wants him to go, just firing him. So I'm not sure if there really is a strategy behind this. We have been reporting for the past day or so about a concerted effort among those who are closest to Jeff Sessions, who are inside the White House, Steve Bannon and others among them, desperately trying to get the president to stop, not only because they are allies of Jeff Sessions, but because they realize that this is bad politics and policy for the president. And just tonight, Chuck Grassley, who's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, who would be in charge of a confirmation hearing if there were to be one for another attorney general, explicitly said, without, prompting specifically in a tweet, that the agenda for the Judiciary Committee is set for the rest of the year, including no AG. So, that just kind of shows you the pushback from Republicans.
Scott, I want to play something that Lindsey Graham told Mano Raju earlier about the president's attacks on Sessions.
I think anybody who's strong would use the power they have and be competent in their decision. So strong people say, I've decided that this man or woman can't serve me well, and I'm going to act accordingly and take the consequence. To me, weakness is play around the edges and you don't use the power you have.
I mean, it sounds like he's calling the president weak.
Well, and I think what Jeff Sessions has been saying through his actions in public communications is, look, you can fire me if you want to. Otherwise, I'm going to be at the office enacting your agenda and doing a pretty darn good job of it. I've been asking these guys to clear the air on behalf of all Republicans for days now. I hope Jeff Sessions and the president do clear the air, because I think Sessions was one of the best cabinet choices he made. Conservatives love Jeff Sessions. They love what he's doing in office. And for this to drag on and on and on is detrimental to enacting the president's agenda, which is ultimately what all Republicans in Washington want to see happen.
I mean, of all the people enacting the president's agenda, Jeff Sessions, whether you agree with what he's doing or not, is doing a good job of enacting the president's agenda with the Justice Department.
He's doing a phenomenal job, and one of the main reasons why Trump was attracted to him in the first place and why Bannon put him on the radar for AG was his strong position on immigration, and he's working night and day to execute those policies. Certainly recently with taking away funding for sanctuary cities and also civil asset forfeiture programs. These are key issues that he continues to execute even as he's being trashed by the president. In addition to Lindsey Graham, we have other strong conservatives out there that have spoken on behalf of Sessions. We have Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, and others saying he's a man of dignity and honor. So people wonder how in the world can Sessions still stay in here with all this constant berating by the president. He's got a lot of support amongst his peers, and will keep him where he is.
The other thing I don't understand is, the president has basically said, if I knew he was going to recuse himself on Russia, I wouldn't have appointed him. But it's the same president who says there's nothing going on with Russia. There's nothing to worry about. So if there was nothing to worry about and there's nothing there, why does he care that the AG had to recuse himself? It really opens up more questions.
You also have to look at timing. Since we've been on the air, the New York Times published an article about this by Peter Baker and Steinhauer, and they're pointing out that part of the agitation, and it is kind of visceral agitation, because his aides are telling him to cut this out, and he won't do it.
No.
And part of the agitation is the family members who are now being dragged into the investigation. So he recused himself months ago. If Trump really had a problem with it, he would have been making a fuss months ago. But it is since Trump Jr., since Kushner have had to be called up to the Senate, that's when he's really gotten upset about this.
When they were good.
Well, I think that's right. He has been saying privately since Sessions recused himself that he's upset about it, and there's no question that as it's gotten closer, he's been more public about wanting Jeff Sessions to recuse himself. One thing I do want to add, that another thing that is happening behind the scenes in the White House is Ted Barrett and I were reporting today that people are urging the president to consider what's known as a recess appointment, trying to wait till the Senate goes into recess and put somebody in there which could last until the next Congress. The only problem with that is that the Senate, for the past, almost 10 years, hasn't gone to recess for this exact reason, and Democrats are on to this, and they are already strategizing about ways to make sure that the Senate stays in session.
We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, our breaking news on the health care front. The Senate Democrats trying some political maneuvering. More on the new tactic next.
We're going crazy.
If you're a comedian, there's a part of you that is unhinged.
Drugs and alcohol have led to some amazing comedy. In the end, the drugs and alcohol always beat art.
Talk of Madness, the history of comedy. Sunday night at 10 on CNN.
To find your ideal hotel, just go to Trivago, type in where you want to go, select your check-in and check-out dates, and search. Remember, Trivago shows you all the different prices for the exact same room. Hotel Trivago.
You can prepare for having a child, but no one prepares for cancer. I remember hoping that he would make it to his first birthday.
Every second is precious when a child is fighting for life.
I'm still trying to grasp the fact she has cancer.
Where would you go to save your child's life? Who would you turn to? St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is often the only hope left for a child facing cancer. Please help these children by becoming a partner in hope today Families never receive a bill from St. Jude for treatment, travel, housing, or food, because all a family should worry about is helping their child live. For just $19 a month, you'll help us continue the life-saving treatment and research these kids need.
My daughter started to tear up. She said, am I going to be okay? And I didn't know how to answer.
Please help by going online or calling with your $19 monthly gift. Join with your credit or debit card right now, and we'll send you this St. Jude t-shirt you can wear to show your support.
To find a cure would be amazing, because cancer takes too many lives.
Become a partner in hope today, because every second counts when a child is fighting for life. Go online or call now.
Next, President Trump openly airing his grievances with lawmakers and his attorney general.
I am disappointed.
Is this vendetta politics? Will his tough talk work in Washington? CNN tonight. Live next.
People worry used car dealers roll back the miles. And at CarSense, that's just what we do. Everywhere. Except the odometer. CarSense. It's car sensation.
At Raymore and Flanagan, when it comes to your satisfaction, we are always improving the shopping experience. That's why we offer guaranteed furniture delivery in 3 days or less and free next day mattress delivery. Now, we're going one step further and offering delivery every day of the week. The furniture and bedding you want when you want it, even on Sundays. Only at Raymore and Flanagan.
People worry used car dealers roll back the miles. And at CarSense, that's just what we do. Everywhere. Except the odometer. CarSense. It's car sensation.
Tuesday, only on CNN.
More breaking news on the healthcare front tonight. The so-called Vote Arama is on hold for now. Senate Democrats insist on seeing the GOP bill before offering any amendments. Now, this comes after 7 Republicans defected to vote against a straight repeal plan this afternoon. Ryan Nobles joins us from Capitol Hill. So what are you learning about the new strategy from Democrats?
Well, as late as this afternoon, Anderson, we were getting reports from a number of different senators that they had hundreds of amendments lined up to put on the floor to be offered up for an up or down vote as soon as the 20 hours of debate concludes tomorrow afternoon. But then late tonight, Chuck Schumer, the minority leader of the Senate, went to the Senate floor and said that they plan to not offer up any amendments until they see the specifics behind the Republican plan to offer up this so-called skinny repeal. Now, it's important to keep in mind, Anderson, that we've heard about this skinny repeal, but at this point, it's really just theory. It's a conceptual plan that Republicans have talked about, but they haven't offered up any specific language. So Democrats say they're not going to play this game. They want to see exactly what is in this bill before they move forward. And at this point, we could end up in somewhat of a staring contest tomorrow evening after that 20 hours of debate finishes up.
And Republicans couldn't pass a straight repeal of Obamacare today. Was that any surprise?
It wasn't really a surprise that they didn't have the votes to pass the straight repeal, but it was a bit of a surprise that so many Republicans voted against it. 7 Republicans in total, including some surprises like Lamar Alexander of Tennessee, Rob Portman of Ohio, and John McCain of Arizona. So when you have 7 Republicans right now that say they can't support a straight repeal, that means that Mitch McConnell needs to pull back at least 5 of them for this skinny repeal, whatever it turns out to be, if they hope to get the 50 votes necessary to get this bill to a conference. The Senate Republicans still feel that that is possible, but right now we don't know exactly how they're going to pull it off.
Ryan Nobles, thanks very much. I want to bring back in the panel. I mean, for a lot of people, look, the details of this get in the weeds and mind-boggling. Your head starts to swim. Do you have a sense of what's going to happen?
That so-called skinny plan to repeal and replace Obamacare is probably the only that has a snowball's chance in where to actually pass, and that's why the Democrats are doing this tactic, because we do only have concepts, and it's really basic, just to get rid of the mandate and get rid of the MEP in that population.
So what's the tactic by Democrats? What's the benefit of that tactic?
The benefit of the tactic is to force Republicans to actually come up with something, but actually put it into legislative language so that they can have a real debate on it and not just surprise everybody at the end of the debate.
And you can't blame them for that. Certainly they should see what they're voting on, unlike, we did with Obamacare. But what I think Dana is right, the skinny version will be the one that is going to be on the table. Talk is that it will include the consumer freedom aspect, which is Ted Cruz's version, which allows, whether you're shopping or selling insurance, you can have more choices. And also Portman's amendment will also be included. And the key, the number one objective.
An opioid?
Yes, exactly. And also they want to make sure they protect the Medicaid funding, which is what the states want. And that's critical because the senators are going to do what their governors want to do because a lot of them are up for re-election.
Yeah, but the CBO came out with scoring on the skinny repeal, and it could, according to the Congressional Budget Office, raise premiums by 20%. And 13 million Americans, which is certainly less than 31 or 22, but a lot of Americans, 16 million Americans, could lose insurance. So I think it is very smart of Minority Leader Schumer and the other Democrats to force the facts out there. Because going from a total repeal to the spin of a skinny repeal sounds like, oh, it's not so significant, and who doesn't want to lose a few pounds? But by doing this, we're getting the real facts out there. 16 million Americans, 20% increase in premiums.
You know what I mean? UGLY, you ain't got no help. Anyway. Again, the top Republican and Senate Judiciary saying by cryptic tweet tonight that even if the president fires Jeff Sessions and puts forward somebody else, the committee that would have to consider such a nomination would not even consider that nomination for the rest of this calendar year. So that's just happened within the last hour or so. Joining us next live is one of the top Democrats who's on that committee, with whom we have a lot to talk about. That's next. Stay with us.
Neo-Nazis? No, not Skinner Repeal. Taking away insurance from 16 million people. That's what it is. Stop trying to make it feel like it's nicer, kinder, gentler. It's not. It's not. It may be skinny to somebody, but somebody who needs help is not skinny today.
Here's what Republicans hate. They hate the taxes. They hate the individual mandate. They hate the premium spikes. They hate the lies that this bill was sold on originally, all these years ago. And they hate the concept that failure to act here is leaving all of that stuff that they hate in place. And so getting over the motion to proceed was a huge deal, because had they not done that, that would have been an epic political failure. And now they can actually address some of these things that Republicans have been screaming about for all these years. I don't know what the perfect solution is, but I know this. Getting to a place where they can actually debate any solutions is a huge win this week.
If they didn't have something to show for all this talk after so many years, that would be worse than having something that's bad?
Absolutely. If you go out and promise people for 7 years, we are going to repeal Obamacare, it's terrible, you know it, I know it, and you show up and you have full control of the government, and you fail on the core campaign promise that gave you the majorities in Congress and the White House, oh my gosh, that would be political.
But part of the reason they're failing is because they were lying. Part of the reason they kept saying that they give it better, cheaper, it would be easy to do. President Trump said this over and over and over again. He was just lying. He had no plan for it. He could not do it more cheaply. He could not to ensure the same amount of people or even more people, which is what he said. He couldn't do it. He was just lying. And the reason they're failing is because they were lying in the first place.
We got to take a break. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, President Trump announcing a new jobs deal in Wisconsin. That's next.
Dogs can't resist the new real meat treats from Rachel Ray Nutrish, inspired by real recipes from Rachel's Kitchen, like burgers, roasted chicken, and more. They're safely cooked with U.S. beef or chicken as the first ingredient, and there's never any meat byproducts.
Bring me back my deli cut treats.
Treats from Nutrish. Real recipes, real ingredients, real good.
It's Lumber Liquidator's Summer Splash Flooring Sale. Get the best selection of wood-look waterproof floors and more, up to 45% off. And all water-resistant Dream Home X2 laminate is on sale. Get more deals from 49 cents and special financing. Hurry, get to the Summer Splash Flooring Sale today.
Nice going, Spencer! I can't believe we broke Old Man Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We?
Go to the door. Ask for the ball back. Are you serious? It's my ball, Myrtleback.
You soldiers.
I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go. Yeah, you mean you're well.
Nice fun. Some friends you are. Hi. Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the windows. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
This was the front page of the local paper in Maryville, Tennessee today. You see the headline on page 1, hanging in the balance. Underneath that, on the left, is an article explaining that the Senate voted yesterday to start debate on repealing Obamacare. On the right side, under that headline, with a lot more real estate, is this story. Quote, Maryville mom of premature twins lobbies Congress to maintain the Affordable Care Act. That paper, the Daily Times, is the hometown paper of Republican Senator Lamar Alexander, who has been a vocal proponent for a long time of killing the Affordable Care Act. Last night, he voted with the majority of his party to kill the ACA, although that vote failed. Republicans then gave it another go this afternoon. They called for a vote on a straight repeal of the Affordable Care Act with no replacement. And that vote failed for the Republicans as well. But that vote failed thanks in part to Lamar Alexander from Maryville, Tennessee. He actually voted for that exact same bill in 2015, but today he was one of 6 Republican senators to turn around and flip his vote to no. In Philly today, Senator Pat Toomey's constituents showed up at his office to tell him to vote no. Dean Heller's constituents turned out in Carson City, Nevada today. Senator Heller was another Republican senator who voted yes to repealing the ACA in 2015, but he changed his mind today. In Maine today, Senator Susan Collins' constituents showed up to thank her for voting no, encouraging her to keep it up. Republicans are nevertheless apparently going to make at least one more try to kill the Affordable Care Act. The Congressional Budget Office just released their analysis of what their next try would do to the country. It says 16 million Americans would lose all health insurance, and congressional staffers tell NBC News it would also result in a spike in health insurance premiums. Well, tonight, 10 governors, 6 Democrats and 4 Republicans have written to Senate leaders asking them not to even take up this bill. Meanwhile, Senate Democrats had planned to stall the process further by submitting hundreds of amendments to whatever bill the Republicans came up with. Now they've changed tack, and the Democrats say they're refusing to submit any of their amendments until they see the final text of the Republicans' bill, which, incidentally, the Republicans still have not released. What should we make of that? Joining us now, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Senator, really nice to have you with us tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rachel.
Can you get us up to speed on where things stand now? That was my little summary of where we're at.
That was pretty good.
I don't understand the amendments decision. What does that mean?
Well, that was a smart move on our part because of the fact that we don't even know what this bill is. How can we start talking about amendments till we see the bill? They have already created chaos with all of these options, option A, B, C, D, E, we're up to F, and you can't get much worse of a grade than F. They have been calling this the skinny proposal, as you know, the skinny plan. And to me, when you look at that CBO score today, the Congressional Budget Office score, this is nothing but a skin and bones plan. That's what it leaves so many Americans with. 16 million people would be kicked off their health insurance, premiums up by 20%, and not only that, 1/6 of the American economy in complete chaos because there would be no end result, because even if they passed this, they would then go home and there would be no conference committee, of course, yet with the House. And I have no idea why they're doing this when we have people that could work together. We have opened the doors and said, let's work on reducing prescription drug costs, strengthening these exchanges and making them more affordable. That's what we would like to do.
I know that the Democrats have been a united front on this. Democrats have been voting no on all of these ACA repeal bills, no matter what they are. Is it your sense, though, that the going to be
able to put together enough votes to pass something. My sense is that they don't really care what they're going to pass as long as it gives them something that they can put to a conference committee and start working on behind closed doors with the House. Do you think they'll be able to pass something, this skinny bill or anything else?
I mean, I can't tell right now. If they did have something, they would have put it forward, and they haven't. And when you look at the votes, sometimes there's 4, sometimes there's 8. Of course, we had Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins showing such courage and standing up to all of this. But we don't know, and they could end up passing some what they call skinny, but what I call, as I said, skin and bones, because it leaves so many people without insurance. And that it's got to be something that we continue. As you could see by those people showing up at offices across the country. I was on Sunday with a pair of twins, identical twins. One's a catcher, one's a pitcher. One has juvenile diabetes, one doesn't. And the mother is afraid that the girl that has that disease won't be able to get insurance because she has a pre-existing condition, not to mention too expensive insulin. And that's just not how America should work. This shouldn't be a lottery system where you don't know if you're going to have health care if you're the pitcher or the catcher when you're identical twins. That's just wrong.
Senator, let me ask you about some news that was made by the committee chairman on the Judiciary Committee, of which you are a member tonight. Senator Grassley tweeted somewhat cryptically in his typical Twitter style that if the president tries to replace his attorney general, tries to get rid of Jeff Sessions and put another one through the confirmation process, calendar's all full, sorry, won't happen all year long. We've also seen the Democrats on your side of the aisle say that if the president wants to try to do this without a confirmation process, put somebody through as a recess appointment, Democrats will just prevent the Senate from recessing, and he won't be allowed to do it that way either. Where do you think this is going to go? What do you think will happen with this standoff between the president and his own AG?
Well, first of all, Senator Grassley is expressing the sentiment of a lot of Republicans, including Senator Lee just yesterday in the Judiciary Committee, came out strong, even saying he didn't agree with Jeff Sessions on a number of things, including criminal justice reform, but this isn't the reason to fire him. On the Democratic side, I guess this is the point of the program where Amy Klobuchar gets to defend Jeff Sessions. As you know, I did not vote for him. I disagree with him vehemently in his positions on immigration, his positions on voting rights and other things. But you don't fire someone for following the law. In this case, he simply recused himself from anything dealing with Russia because of his past involvement in meetings with the Russian ambassador and other issues. And he gave that job to his deputy, as is appropriate, Rod Rosenstein, who has, in fact, appointed a special counsel who was an FBI director under a Republican administration, well respected on both sides of the aisle. And so that is why you see Democrats saying, no, the president cannot fire the attorney general. I guess he legally can, but should not fire the attorney general, joining Republicans saying this over matters related to Jeff Sessions simply following the law. And that is all he's done. He has recused himself and put someone in charge.
Yeah, it's no love letter to Jeff Sessions to say that. It's about following the law here. Senator Amy Klobuchar, thank you for being with us tonight. Nice to have you here.
It was great to be on, Rachel. Thanks.
All right, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Impressive performance and seating for 7. Right now, lease the QX60 for $439 a month at your local Infiniti retailer.
Never register today at Elite Singles, where you'll benefit from 100% verified profiles, an extensive personality test, and tailored matches in your area. EliteSingles.com. Never more ready to fall in love again.
What if we chose the wrong security company?
You should never have to ask what if when it comes to your home security. Monty's patented smart home technology provides its customers with response times up to 10 times faster than the industry average. You'll never have to ask.
What if they'd responded just a little faster?
Call the number on your screen right now and get a professionally installed Monty 4G wireless smart security system with no upfront costs and professional monitoring starting for less than $1 a day. Monty is ranked highest in customer satisfaction with home security systems by J.D. Power, which is why you'll never have to ask.
What if the kids were home?
Call now. For no money down and just $1 a day, you can protect your home and family with Monty Smart Security. Plus, if you call today, we'll add a free Amazon Echo Dot for a limited time only. Don't wait. Call Monty Smart Security now.
It's just a burst pipe. I can fix it.
No.
With Claim Rate Guard, your rates won't go up just because of a claim.
I totally could.
No.
Switching to Allstate is worth it.
One of the things we are going to be watching for tomorrow on Capitol Hill is day 2 of a hearing that's going to be convened by the Judiciary Committee. Senator Chuck Grassley is the chair of that committee. Today, day 1 didn't get much attention because the president blew up the transgender policy in the military. And the healthcare fight and lots of other things going on. But tomorrow will be day 2 of the Judiciary Committee holding hearings that appear to be designed to make it seem like the real Russia scandal has nothing to do with the Trump organization. The real Russia scandal is a Democratic scandal. We've been talking for several days about Chuck Grassley's efforts to try to turn the Russia-Trump scandal around and try to make it into a kind of counter-narrative. It's all about Hillary Clinton. It's all about the Democrats thing. That got pushed from today until tomorrow. We'll be watching for that tomorrow on Capitol Hill. That does it for us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow. Now it's time for the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Good evening, Lawrence.
Good evening, Rachel. Rachel, I really liked your point earlier in the show tonight about the Trump tweeting about the transgender policy in the military going straight to the supporters of Jeff Sessions. So the Jeff Sessions base, which, by the way, existed politically before there was ever a Trump base. And I hadn't considered that today. I hadn't linked that up. That is when you try to make sense of a Trump tweet, at first it feels impossible. It always does. But I think you might have found the light in there that makes sense.
You know, that I try to avoid the president's tweets, except when he tries to change major policies affecting the largest military in the world with them. But I think both the transgender policy stuff that he tweeted and also that super, bordering on violent, vituperative anti-immigrant stuff that he's been doing. I mean, you put those two things together and you're pretty close to a portrait of the things that matter to Jeff Sessions as a politician and the things that might excite a pro-Jeff Sessions, Trump-supporting base member. So I think especially if you see those two things together, I think he's trying to make up for angering people about his attacks on Jeff Sessions.
And the attacks on Jeff Sessions seem to be the first thing that have in any way caused him any bumps from people like Rush Limbaugh's audience, Republican senators. He's getting a first sensation of real resistance from those people.
And you can see him trying to throw them a bone, trying to buy them off, trying to both distract them and please them with something unrelated, because those are the kinds of folks that he really can't bear criticism from for long.
Well, I think that was a very important insight that you had, and I learned only by watching your show.
Thank you, my friend. Very kind.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Lawrence.
So last night on this program, I speculated, it was pure speculation, just speculated with Senator Al Franken that the president might try to replace Attorney General Jeff Sessions with a recess appointment during the August recess. And now, of course, tonight, the breaking news is that the president is discussing replacing Jeff Sessions with a recess appointment during the August recess.
I told you before, I'm very disappointed.
You can be disappointed in someone, but still want them to continue to do their job.
I was trying to get Sessions to quit. I hope Sessions doesn't quit.
Jeff has been very loyal to the president, and I think he deserves loyalty back.
He did what I believe any ethical attorney general would do under the circumstances.
I personally would strongly recommend against firing Sessions. But we will see what happens. Time will tell. Time will tell.
We want to get legislation to finally end the failed Obamacare status quo.
Make no mistake about it. Skinny repeal is equal to full repeal.
We better get that done, fellas, please. Please, Mike.
What we need to do in the Senate is figure out what the lowest common denominator is.
It's going to be so easy.
This certainly won't be easy.
Please, Mike.
Just doing a little bit of governing around here.
You think the president is demonstrating weakness by his handling of sessions?
Absolutely.
You got the last word.
The breaking news tonight from the Washington Post is that the president is discussing with his advisors the possibility of replacing Attorney General Jeff Sessions with a recess appointment during the August recess that would bypass Senate confirmation and allow the new Attorney General to serve without being confirmed by the Senate until the Post reports some advisors have come away convinced that Trump is determined to ultimately remove Sessions and is seriously considering a recess appointment to replace him, an idea that has been discussed on some of the cable news shows he watches. And it was discussed here last night when I brought it up with Senator Al Franken. That might have been the first time that President Trump discovered there is such a thing as a recess appointment. And I've been raising the question about a recess appointment for Attorney General on Twitter before last night. My raising the question of a recess appointment was purely speculation, as I said. I was just speculating. I had no sources in the White House telling me any of that. But the man who now occupies the presidency is so fully transparent that speculation about what he might be thinking about could not be easier. And of course, once he learned there was something called a recess appointment, President Trump was going to start thinking about it and talking about it, which brings us to what might be our most interesting crossroads yet for the president and Republican senators. It has finally happened. Republican senators are finally up in arms against President Trump. Finally. They have found their voice. The president has finally gone too far for even Republican senators. Now, before we consider what the president has finally done that Republican senators just cannot accept, we really do owe ourselves, for perspective, a minute to remember just some of the things that Republican senators have had no problem accepting from their Republican president. When Donald Trump said John McCain was not a war hero because he got captured, Republican senators accepted that. When Donald Trump made the unconstitutional campaign promise to ban all Muslims from entering this country, Republican senators accepted that. When Donald Trump attacked Senator Ted Cruz's wife and suggested that Ted Cruz's father was involved in the Kennedy assassination, Republican senators accepted that, and then in the most horrific turn that we have ever seen in a senator's career, Ted Cruz himself retroactively accepted that and actually brought his wife and his children to the Trump White House to bow down before their new president. And when Donald Trump attacked Rosie O'Donnell and Megyn Kelly and talked about blood coming out of Megyn Kelly, Republican senators accepted that. And of course, who can forget that when Donald Trump attacked Kaiser Khan and his wife Ghazala, the parents of United States Army Captain Humayun Khan, who was killed in the line of duty in Iraq, a heroic moment that saved the lives of his men and many others. When Donald Trump attacked them, Republican senators accepted Donald Trump's attacks on the Khan family. He was their nominee for president by then, and Republican senators made it clear that they would accept anything their nominee said or did. When Donald Trump was revealed on a video recording to have bragged about sexual assault and described his own technique of sexual assault, Republican senators accepted that. Republican senators with daughters accepted that. Republican senators with wives and mothers and sisters accepted that. Donald Trump describing himself as a sexual assaulter was something that Republican senators had no problem accepting. President Trump woke up one morning and tweeted lies about President Obama illegally wiretapping Trump Tower, and Republican senators accepted that. And let's never, ever forget that Republican senators accepted Donald Trump lying about President Obama's birth for over 5 years. Now, what I would love to be able to do right here is just sit here in silence with you as we all just let it sink in. What Republicans and Republican senators in particular have accepted from Donald Trump And in that silence, we could think of dozens and dozens of more outrageous things that Republican senators have accepted from Donald Trump. But this is TV, and if I go silent, they'll pop a commercial in here. So let's move on to the outrage, the final outrage that has provoked some Republican senators to reach into what's left of their conscience and object to President Trump. And that outrage, of course, is the president's treatment of a Republican senator. Senator Jeff Sessions was the first senator to endorse the candidacy of Donald Trump. Senator Jeff Sessions was the only Republican senator who endorsed the candidacy of Donald Trump before Donald Trump won the Republican presidential nomination. And this week, Senator Jeff Sessions has become the new Trump enemy, the new Hillary, the new Obama, the new Lion Ted, the new little Marco. We now have the beleaguered Attorney General Jeff Sessions, according to Donald Trump. And so, for Republican senators, Donald Trump has finally crossed the line that he crossed with a majority of Americans during the presidential campaign.
Jeff Sessions is an honorable man. He did what I believe any ethical attorney general would do under the circumstances.
Jeff has been very loyal to the president, and I think he deserves loyalty back.
He is one of the most honest people you would ever know. He is a man of very high integrity. Jeff Sessions has my confidence.
I think that his independence has been proven by his willingness to recuse himself.
Kenneth Starr, the special prosecutor who investigated Bill Clinton, has just published an op-ed piece in the Washington Post saying that the president's attack on Attorney General Jeff Sessions is, quote, one of the most outrageous and profoundly misguided courses of presidential conduct I have witnessed in 5 decades in and around the nation's capital. The New York Times conservative columnist Ross Douthat has written tonight in a column that will appear in tomorrow's print edition, quote, Donald Trump's campaign against his Attorney General Jeff Sessions, in which he is seemingly attempting to insult and humiliate and tweet shame Sessions into resignation, is an insanely stupid exercise. The column goes on to describe the president's actions as a multi-tiered tower of political idiocy, moronic madness, and proof that the president is, quote, gravely deficient somewhere at the intersection of reason and judgment and conscience and self-control. The last line of this conservative op-ed piece is simply, this president should not be the president, and the sooner he is not, the better. Joining us now, John Howland, National Affairs Analyst for NBC News and MSNBC, Max Boot, Senior Fellow for National Security Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations and a former Foreign Policy Advisor to presidential campaigns. Also, Mika Ouyang, a former House Intelligence Committee staff member and Vice President for the National Security Program at the Third Way. John Howland, the attack that we're seeing here is of course unprecedented, and something else that conservatives are pointing out is it proves that Donald Trump cares nothing about policy, because no one is a more faithful deliverer of Donald Trump policy than Jeff Sessions in the Justice Department.
Yes, I was going to say, thank you for having me on tonight, given that we're discussing an insanely stupid exercise. I'm an expert on those matters, so I feel highly qualified to comment here. It's the case that it's extraordinary in the same way that Donald Trump firing Jim Comey caused liberals to suddenly rally around Jim Comey, who they previously hated because of his role in the 2016 campaign and hurting Hillary Clinton. Now you've got not just Republican senators, but even people on the left who are suddenly rallying around Jeff Sessions, of all people, who is prosecuting the most conservative, aggressive, retrograde, pro-law and order at the extreme, hyperbolic version of that part of Trump's agenda that you could possibly imagine. It's part of the thing that gives him some political cover with the administration. In addition to the senators and the Republicans who are institutionally and personally fond of him, he's also someone who has this wiggle room to fight Trump, because the reality is that the Trump base loves Jeff Sessions on the merits that they care about, on immigration, on these law enforcement issues, right? But it is certainly the case that Trump seems to be, just does not seem to care about any of that, at least so far. There is some reporting that suggests that he may be moderating, he may have spent his rage over the last couple days. But when I read, as I've now read the Washington Post and the New York Times tonight, that Reince Priebus and Steve Bannon are telling him, don't do this. I remember the last time that Reince Priebus and Steve Bannon and Reince Priebus told him not to do something, which was don't install Anthony Scaramucci as communications director. He did that, and the fact that they are arguing that he shouldn't do this, I would not say that it's necessarily a good sign, augurs well for the career of Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, and Mika, you worked in the House of Representatives, close experience working with Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee. How surprised are you that the line that the president crossed that finally turned Republican senators against what he's been thinking about is basically that he attacked a former Republican senator?
Well, Lawrence, I also worked for Senator Kennedy in the Senate, and it was a very collegial place then, so this is absolutely expected. The Senate is very much a club, and while Senator Sessions was one of the most conservative senators that there was, he was very popular among his colleagues, and so it's unsurprising that they would take up a strong defense of him.
Max Boot, you're a conservative Republican who turned against Donald Trump before he managed to insult a former Republican senator. I want to read you something that Chuck Grassley tweeted tonight. And in terms of all of the defenses of Jeff Sessions mounted today by Republican senators, this might actually technically be the most forceful one. He said, everybody in D.C. should be warned that the agenda for the Judiciary Committee is set for the rest of the year, for the rest of 2017. Judges first, sub-cabinet second, Attorney General, no way. And so, Max, there's the guy who would be running a confirmation hearing for the next Attorney General saying, I will not schedule a confirmation hearing for another Attorney General in this year. But of course, that all becomes meaningless if the president does a recess appointment.
Well, just to correct first the way you described me, Lawrence, I have to point out I am a conservative ex-Republican. Became an ex-Republican because I was so disgusted with Donald Trump, and it's very interesting to me to see, as you're pointing out, what it is that makes Republicans finally turn against Trump, and he can insult the FBI, the CIA, minorities, women, transgender people, anybody in the world, but no, he starts insulting Jeff Sessions, and all of a sudden they get offended. And of course, I'm feeling a little bit conflicted here because I am no fan of Jeff Sessions. Remember that he lied about his meetings with the Russian ambassador. Last week we found out that they, according to these intelligence intercepts, that they actually discussed campaign material, which he had refused to admit in the past. So on the merits, you can make a strong case that Jeff Sessions ought to resign. But of course, if his resignation leads Trump to appoint a stooge who then fires Bob Mueller, of course, I will join the consensus in Washington and say, please, Jeff Sessions, stay right where you are. But it's an uneasy place to be. And I think what we have to keep in mind here, not lose sight of, is that what this is all about is how scared that Donald Trump is of the Bob Mueller probe, how scared he is that Mueller is going to uncover more collusion with Russia, how scared he is of what Mueller will find in his taxes and his business practices, so much so that he is willing to basically trash one of his closest allies and take on the entire establishment in Washington because he thinks that might be a better course for him than allowing the Mueller probe to continue. That's a very, very telling indicator.
John, Max's point couldn't be more important. Everything that the president does in this arena is the behavior of someone who is completely guilty. If you're looking for logic to it, it is logical that he gets rid of Comey. It's logical that he tries to fire the special prosecutor. If he's guilty.
Logical that he explores pardons if he's guilty. Yeah. All of that's right. The one thing that's not rational, and it's interesting right now because I'm told that allies of Sessions are trying to argue to the White House, trying to say, you know, if you want to get rid of Mueller, you don't have to fire Sessions. Just go fire Rod Rosenstein. The president can fire the Deputy Attorney General. He doesn't have to do this two-step. If he wants to get to Mueller, he can get rid of the guy. Sessions would, you know, we'd go install a new Deputy Attorney General. You could get this done in a different way. It speaks to, yes, there's a lot of indications the way he's behaving that he is a man who is afraid and a man who, again, his our behavior is that he's guilty, but there's also this core of irrationality to it. He's just angry at Sessions for having done this recusal, and his anger even seems to be clouding his judgment about how to get to the kind of the kind of movement that he really wants, which is the ultimate end game here, which is to fire Mueller, I think.
And in a tweet today, the president found fault with Jeff Sessions for not doing something that is not within Jeff Sessions' power, but is within Donald Trump's power. He said, why didn't AG Sessions replace acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, a Comey friend who was in charge of the Clinton investigation and so forth? And Mika, of course, that is a presidential power. That is not the Attorney General's power.
That's absolutely right. And it's sort of ironic that Donald Trump is complaining about Andrew McCabe's wife receiving political contributions from Democrats when Donald Trump himself has given excessively to Democrats in campaign contributions over the years. And so all of these critiques of the Mueller team and their past campaign contributions, suggesting that they are unable to be objective when they have been professional lawyers throughout, is really stunning given his own political contribution history.
So, Max, when there's been a lot of speculation in the past about what will Republicans do if, or where is the breaking point. There are Republicans who are kind of suggesting that their breaking point would be the firing of Jeff Sessions, but scheme it out for us. Let's assume that the president either forces a Sessions resignation in August or fires him in August and does a recess appointment. Would these Republicans who are saying we don't like this today, would they really, when the moment came, stand up against the president for this?
Well, that's the big question, Lawrence, and they have not really stood up to the president on just about any issue to date. So the question is, would this be different? I think one way you could maybe avoid this is by not having the Senate go into recess, so at least not give them the opportunity for a recess appointment. But what's kind of troubling to me here is that all these senators are drawing the red line around Jeff Sessions' job, whereas to my mind, the actual red line is trying to fire Bob Mueller. And as Miki just pointed out, there's other ways that Trump can do that other than actually replacing Sessions. He can try to go around Rosenstein and find somebody else at the Justice Department who will fire Mueller for him. And that, to me, should be the red line, just as he crossed the red line by firing Jim Comey. And it's amazing to me that Republicans didn't seem to care about that. Now, they have to make clear to him that if he gets rid of Mueller, that they will instantly pass an independent counsel statute so the investigation will not end, that there will be a completely independent counsel as there was prior to 1999. That is what Republicans ought to be saying. The issue with Sessions is only part of it. I think the red line really ought to be Mueller, and I wish they would speak out more on that subject.
John, quickly, before we get a break in.
Well, here's a question for you as a Senate expert, right? There's a line in the New York Times report tonight that says that Senate leaders made clear that they would block Mr. Trump from replacing Mr. Sessions if he tried to do so during the recess. What are the mechanisms that the Senate has? You know way more about the Senate than pretty much anyone alive. What could be done about that?
The recess is a mirage. I mean, you can basically send everybody home and technically keep the Senate in session, but it'll look like a recess, but it's technically in session, so that you can't do recess appointments. Mitch McConnell's did that, in fact, so that President Obama couldn't do recess appointments at certain points. So that's definitely a strategy, and that would be completely up to Mitch McConnell to do that. There's a very tricky way that the Democrats might also be able to keep the recess from actually becoming a formal recess that opens up this whole.
So this may be the answer to your question, which is they might be able to stand up to Trump without actually having to stand up.
The passive standing up to Trump. That could be it. John Heilman gets the last word on standing up to Trump with Republicans, and I really appreciate it, John. Mika Oyank, thank you for joining us. Max, we're going to need you in another segment. Thank you. Coming up, presidential chaos reached the Defense Department today, and Senator John McCain voted against a Republican health care bill today, a vote that was consistent with the dramatic speech that he gave in the Senate yesterday.
Oh, you're not taking these.
Hey, you're not taking those. Whoa, you're not taking that. Come with me.
You're not taking that.
You're not taking that. You're not taking that.
I'm taking the Subaru.
Don't be late. Even when we're not there to keep them safe, our Subaru Outback will be.
Love. It's what makes a Subaru a Subaru.
I'm your Venus.
The smoother the skin, the more comfortable you are in it.
flexes for comfort, and has a disposable made for you. Skin smoothing Venus razors.
Same hotel, same price? Oh, no, I know. There are so many different prices out there all over the internet. And Trivago instantly compares them all to find your ideal hotel for the best price. Hotel Trivago.
This is Joanne. Her long day as a hairstylist starts with shoulder pain when, hey Joanne, want to trade the all-day relief of 2 Aleve with 6 Tylenol?
Give up my 2 Aleve for 6 Tylenol? No thanks. For me, it's Aleve.
You don't let anything keep you sidelined. That's why you drink Ensure with 9 grams of protein and 26 vitamins and minerals. For the strength and energy to get back to doing what you love. Ensure, always be you.
Mesothelioma, it's all we do. With 7 offices across the country, we are large enough to take on big corporations. Let us come meet with you. Call us at 1-800-300-1895. That's 1-800-300-1895.
More doing chores for mom per roll? Bounty is more absorbent, so the roll can last 50% longer than the leading ordinary brand. So you get more life per roll. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
I'm your Venus.
The smoother the skin, the more comfortable you are in it. So find a Venus Smooth that contours to curves, flexes for comfort, and has a disposable made for you. Skin smoothing Venus razors.
Get a free mesothelioma book from mesobook.com.
People who have been diagnosed with mesothelioma have many questions. That's why we offer this free book.
Call toll-free at 1-800-555-3119.
Chaos reigned today in the Trump administration once again when the president tweeted an announcement about a new policy in the military that no one in the military or the Pentagon knew about, and therefore is not a new policy in the military. This is the same president who celebrated the passage of the Trump-Ryan healthcare bill in the House of Representatives in a Rose Garden gathering and then later called the bill mean. Senators voting on healthcare legislation know for certain that if they pass a bill, at some point after they pass a bill, the president will criticize the bill that they passed at his urging. Today's Trump administration chaos appeared to be an attempt by the president to distract attention from the real business of Washington today, healthcare legislation, and the investigation of Trump-Russia connections. This morning, the president tweeted, after consultation with my generals and military experts, please be advised that the United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military. Our military must be focused on decisive and overwhelming victory and cannot be burdened with the tremendous medical costs and disruption that transgender in the military would entail. There was apparently no consultation with his generals. Secretary of Defense, former General James Mattis, is on vacation and made no response to the president's tweet. The Defense Department released this response: we refer all questions about the president's statements to the White House. And here is what the White House said.
This was a military decision. This was about military readiness. This was about unit cohesion. This was about resources within the military and nothing more. Guys, I really don't have anything else to add on that topic. As I do, I'll keep you posted.
So the Pentagon knows nothing about this military decision, and the White House is obviously lying when calling it a military decision. And as of tonight, nothing has changed for anyone serving or wishing to serve in the United States military. Joining us now, Anna Marie Cox, contributor to the New York Times Magazine and the host of the podcast With Friends Like These, and back with us, Max Boot. And Anna, Rachel made a great point in the previous hour about how perfectly this presidential statement via tweet this morning fits with the Jeff Sessions constituency out there who now might be a little bit alienated from President Trump.
Oh, it's definitely, like, this has the stench of Bannon upon it, right? I mean, it's definitely an attempt to kind of shore up that part of his base. I have to say that's one of the things that makes it particularly grotesque, right? And he's transparently playing politics with our national defense, and he's doing so at the expense of real men and women who are serving honorably. And beyond those men and women in the military, he's sort of putting a target on the back of a lot of trans people who already feel victimized, by this presidency, already feel like their physical person is at risk. It adds just a new category to the number of people who feel unsafe in this country because of this president. And if I could add on the distraction bit, someone once compared this White House, covering this White House, to watching 5-year-olds play soccer. They run around, they just go wherever the ball is. And that is, of course, an insult to 5-year-olds. But if I can extend the metaphor just a bit, this is like watching 5-year-olds play soccer on a field filled with landmines. Everything they do is fraught with danger. There is something bad that might happen at each moment. And today's tweet storm actually revealed that. I'm sure you saw the story that said for 9 minutes at the Pentagon, the generals there thought that he might be declaring a preemptive strike on Korea. They believed that that was within the realm of possibility. I mean, there is so many things wrong with everything that happened today. I want to make sure that that doesn't get lost. Like, we've been very fortunate as a country that no true, national disaster, international disaster has befallen us while this, chaos profiteer is in charge. But, that luck, statistically, I don't know if it can hold. And I'm frightened. I really am.
Let's listen to what Senator Orrin Hatch said today. Senator Hatch took some time off from trying to take health care insurance away from 20 million people and said this about the president's statement today.
But I've said, look, people who are transgender, they don't choose to be transgender. They're born that way. And why should we hold that against them? And they're human beings. And many of them are extremely talented human beings. So, we should be open to everybody.
Senator John McCain issued this statement today, the president's tweet. This is yet another example of why major policy announcements should not be made via Twitter. The statement was unclear. The Department of Defense has already decided to allow currently serving transgender individuals to stay in the military, and many are serving honorably today. Max Boot, did the White House expect a surge of public Republican congressional support for this?
They probably did, but I think as much as anything, what Trump really wanted was just us talking about this issue. He wanted the controversy to distract from the other controversies, right? Because every crazy thing that the Trump administration does is basically a distraction from the 300 other previous crazy things that they've done. And he's really been hammered on the Jeff Sessions thing for the last 2 days, including by his allies. So I think this is really an example of what in the Clinton administration was called boob bait for Bubbas. I mean, he's throwing it out there. He's throwing out some red meat to the base so that they'll be happy and ignore the fact that he's trashing their champion, Jeff Sessions. But this is, as Anna Marie so eloquently put it, I mean, this is a lousy way to run a presidency. This is no way to run a serious enterprise. And, I mean, this really came out of left field. I mean, this blindsided, I'm sure, Jim Mattis, who's on vacation, and blindsided the generals, because nobody was asking for all trans individuals to be banned from the service. That's not something that the military is asking for. They don't want to deal with it because these individuals are serving honorably and bravely. Why do you want to kick them out? Even the right-wing Republicans on the Hill who were trying to block money for gender reassignment surgery, they weren't trying to kick out all these trans individuals who are already in the military. This is Trump getting to the right of Orrin Hatch. That's not a place where you really want to be. And he's just doing it for transparently cynical political reasons. I mean, does anybody really think that Trump is actually a member of the religious right, that he's actually a social conservative? I mean, give me a break. This is the most brazen political opportunism and cynicism. And it's a truly sad commentary on a lot of the religious right that it may well work, that they're falling for it.
And they admitted this, right? They admitted this to, I think, Axios, that this was a political ploy, that they're cleverly going to try to force Democrats to defend it because they think blue-collar voters will just eat this up. And I have to say, I think that they are underestimating America's, working class. Trans people are working class too, and people who are working class aren't necessarily closed-minded bigots like other people in the administration I could name.
Well, I would hope that, Anna Marie, I would hope you're right. Unfortunately, up until now, we've seen that those of us who think that the public will turn against Trump decisively have been overestimating the public, or at least overestimating his base. And unfortunately, they've remained with him through all this. And who knows what it'll take to actually make them wake up and smell the coffee. Maybe his attack on Sessions will finally do the trick, but even there, I'm doubtful.
Well, a majority of the public has been standing against this president since before his inauguration, and so the majority is still opposed to Trump. It's that base, it's that that sticks with him, where the question marks still remain. Anna Marie Cox, Max Boot, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate that. Coming up, another Republican plan to completely repeal the Affordable Care Act failed in the Senate, and this time, John McCain voted with the Democrats.
Impressive performance and seating for 7. Right now, lease the QX60 for $439 a month at your local Infiniti retailer.
ChoiceHotels.com. Bada book, bada boom.
That's it?
He means book direct at ChoiceHotels.com for the lowest price on our rooms guaranteed. Plus, earn free nights and instant rewards at check-in.
Yeah, like I said.
Book now at ChoiceHotels.com.
Hello, this is ADT. Is there chemo pay?
I could hear crackling in the walls, and my mind went totally blank.
All I remember saying was, my boyfriend's beating me, and she took it from there.
When a fire is going on, you're running around, you're not thinking clearly, so they called the fire department for us.
And all of this occurred in 4 minutes or less.
Within 5 minutes.
I am absolutely grateful we all made it out safely.
It's kind of one of those things where you can't even thank somebody.
People you don't know actually care about you.
To protect what you love, call 1-800-ADT-CARES.
Bill assumed it was a costume party. Bill assumed his mayo was the best choice. Assumed nothing. Just like the leading brand, Kraft Real Mayo is made with high-quality ingredients at a price you can feel good about. No wonder Kraft is so good.
I'm so proud of you.
I got the internship.
That's awesome. I knew you would.
I'm so proud of you.
The knife wounds all over the place. Drug test is clear. You got everything except for why. You didn't try to stop her.
The mind plays tricks. You see things that aren't there.
Tell us anything, whatever you get.
I think there's something wrong with me.
Repealing and replacing Obamacare. We better get that done, fellas, please. Mike, we need that so badly.
The latest Trump, Pence, Ryan, McConnell healthcare plan was defeated in the Senate this afternoon in a vote of 55 to 45. 7 Republicans joined every Democrat in voting against the so-called repeal-only proposal that would have virtually completely repealed the Affordable Care Act without a replacement. 6 of the Republicans who voted against it voted for a nearly identical repeal bill in 2015 that was vetoed by President Obama. Senator John McCain was one of the Republican senators who voted against the bill today. And that vote by Senator McCain made clearer what he meant yesterday in his speech objecting to legislation written by the leadership behind closed doors. Senator McCain cast 2 procedural votes supporting Mitch McConnell yesterday, but this was the first vote that was directly on the substance of the legislation. And that's the one that Senator McCain voted against. Based on what Senator McCain said yesterday, this may mean that Senator McCain will vote against any other actual legislative proposal offered by the majority leader. Reports indicate that Mitch McConnell's legislative endgame is to get something that Republicans are calling skinny repeal that would leave most of the Affordable Care Act intact. It would repeal the individual mandate, the employer mandate, and the medical device tax. The Congressional Budget Office says that legislation would result in 16 million Americans losing health insurance and a 20% increase in premiums. Joining us now is Julie Rovner, Chief Washington Correspondent at Kaiser Health News. Julie, so finally the McCain statement of yesterday is starting to come into view and make sense. And I speculated last night that his votes yesterday, he would say, were procedural, but when he got to the substance, he voted against Mitch McConnell piece of legislation. Does that mean, if you add McCain to what feel like the no votes upcoming, that the Republicans might not be able to pass anything?
It might mean that the Republicans couldn't pass anything. That was always a possibility going into this. What they were able to do to cobble together the 50 that they needed to proceed with the debate was basically promise the moderates that they would give them what they want, a chance to vote on that, promise the conservatives that they could have a chance to vote on what they wanted, but there was no piece of legislation where you were going to get both the moderates and the conservatives together. At this point, we're still waiting for what that piece of legislation might look like that they could get everybody on board. Perhaps it's this skinny bill, but not necessarily.
And it turns out the skinny bill has a very big effect on people. You know, when you hear skinny bill, you know, they're not changing too much. Well, 16 million people lose health insurance under the so-called skinny bill.
That's right. The skinny bill, it would take away the requirement for most people to have insurance, but it would leave the requirements that insurers sell to sick people. So basically what the Congressional Budget Office says is that there will only be sick people left in the pool. Insurers aren't going to want to participate in those markets. So you're going to end up, as you pointed out, with a 20% premium increase, but you're also likely to end up with lots more places where there is no insurance available for sick or healthy people. That's a big problem. That's a problem with several of these bills, and it's a problem that none of them really address.
There are about 15 taxes in the Affordable Care Act, and in the so-called skinny bill, only one of them gets repealed, the medical device tax. That's an interesting one to target because the repeal of that tax does have some Democratic support, liberal Democratic support from Elizabeth Warren, from the Democratic senators from Minnesota, and at least about 10 or so Democrats.
That's right. There are big medical device makers in Massachusetts and in Minnesota, as you point out, and those senators have voted for a repeal of this particular tax in the past. There's some thought that there will also be some kind of delay or repeal of the Cadillac tax, which is this very unpopular tax on very high-end health insurance that's already been delayed. But that's one other possible tax that could be in that package. But those are pretty much the only taxes that would be addressed in this very small package.
And that tax is in the package specifically to try to tempt these Democrats or make the vote very difficult for them, but they seem to be hanging together. Democrats seem to be having no trouble hanging together.
No, I don't think the Democrats are having any trouble hanging together, although it's interesting there may be a vote tomorrow that's being forced by the Republicans to try to get the Democrats to say whether or not they support single payer, although at this point the Democrats are not really having that.
Julie Rovner, thanks for covering for us. Thanks for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. Coming up, the Russian government is now threatening the United States over the sanctions bill that is going through the Congress and headed for the president's signature or veto. Former Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman will join us next.
Richard Engel doesn't just get the story, he goes to the center of it.
The Cold War spy versus spy culture seems to be making a comeback.
Join him for a special series, On Assignment with Richard Engel. This week, he reports from Moscow with an exclusive interview with Eugene Kaspersky, whose cyber company has been accused of being an arm of the Russian government.
Does your company communicate and cooperate with the intelligence services?
And he explores Russia's cyber threat to America. On Assignment with Richard Engel, Friday at 9 on MSNBC.
We the people are tired of being surprised with extra monthly fees. We want HD and every box and DVR all included. Because we don't like surprises.
Yeah, it's like changing up the celebrity at the end to someone more handsome, talented,
Really?
and British.
Switch from cable to DirecTV. Get an all-included package for $25 a month. And for a limited time, get a $100 reward card. Call 1-800-DirecTV.
I just want to find a used car without getting ripped off.
Start at thenewcarfax.com.
Show me used trucks with one owner.
Pretty cool.
Show me the Carfax.
Start your used car search at the allnewcarfax.com. This is what you woke up for. This is your Peloton. This is your instructor, Robin. Robin is not going to go easy on you. This is you attacking the hill, crushing the flats, climbing your way through the pack. This is how you make a better day for yourself and your family. Here in your home. This is Peloton.
It's the Kia Summer SUV Clearance Event. From the brand ranked #1 in initial quality by J.D. Power 2 years in a row. We're celebrating with deals on J.D. Power award-winning SUVs like the capable Sorento, the adventurous Turbo Soul, and the Nero, the most fuel-efficient crossover. Plus, the versatile Sportage, named a KBB.com Best Buy. Hurry in for great offers on quality SUVs at the Kia Summer SUV Clearance Event. And now, get up to $4,000 cash back on a new 2017 Sorento.
Inclusions than any of the resorts on the planet. Save up to 65%. Call 1-800-SANDALS.
Home is where we bust a move. But when you bust something else, trust Angie's List to help. Get started at angieslist.com today.
We're drowning in information. Where in all of this is the stuff that matters? The stakes are so high. Your finances, your future. How do you solve this? You don't. You partner with a firm that advises governments in the Fortune 500 and can deliver insight person to person on what matters to you. Morgan Stanley.
Russian legislators are calling for what they call a painful response to the Russia sanctions bill the House of Representatives passed yesterday. According to the Washington Post, the sanctions passage cemented views in Moscow that Trump's election has provided few deliverables for the Kremlin and that the American president is being held hostage by a foreign policy establishment that seeks conflict with Russia. The Post also reports the Russian deputy foreign minister told a Russian state-run news agency, Washington is a source of danger. Essentially, the possibilities for normalization of relations in the foreseeable future are closed. Yesterday, the House voted 419-3 in support of the Russia sanctions bill. Tonight, Senator Bob Corker, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, announced congressional leaders reached an agreement that allows the Senate to pass a bill to impose new sanctions on Russia, Iran, and North Korea as soon as this week. Today, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee told Chuck Todd Congress is prepared to override a presidential veto.
Let me ask you this. Yes. He did veto it.
You guys passed this with veto-proof majorities. Would that veto be over? Would that likely?
Yes.
They would override that
Yes.
veto. So he's in a no. He almost has to accept it.
Correct. Former Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman joins us next.
It's okay that everybody ignores me when I drive. It's fine, because I get a safe driving bonus check every 6 months I'm accident-free. Because I don't use my cell phone when I'm driving, even though my family does and leaves me all alone. Here's something else. I don't share it with Mom. I don't. Right, Mom? I have a brand new putter you don't even know about. It's awesome.
Safe driving bonus checks only from Allstate.
Sometimes I leave the seat up on purpose.
Switching to Allstate is worth it.
Hi. When you clock out, I'll clock in, sensing and automatically adjusting to your every move. There. I can even warm these. Does your bed do that? I'm the new Sleep Number 360 smart bed. Let's meet at a Sleep Number store.
It's here, but it's going by fast. The opportunity of the year is back. The Mercedes-Benz Summer Event. Get to your dealer today for incredible once-a-season offers and start firing up those grills. Lease the E300 for $569 a month at your local Mercedes-Benz dealer. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.
The average traveller visits loads of different websites before booking their hotel. That's fair enough. You want to make sure you get a great hotel for the best price. There are so many websites out there. How can you visit them all? Well, before you book, check on Trivago. Trivago instantly compares prices from more than 250 websites and apps. And that's how Trivago finds your ideal hotel for the best price. Hotel Trivago.
So, I think I got to get my roof repaired. You know anybody?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, great. Can you do a free background check on them? Get me some additional quotes and book it for 2 weeks from now.
You can't expect your neighbors to do everything Home Advisor can. So to find and book a top-rated home pro for free, just ask Home Advisor.
In our house, we go through a lot of toilet paper. We needed a roll that really lasts. So we switched to new Charmin Super Mega Roll. With more goes per roll, it keeps any busy bathroom rolling. Get 6 regular rolls in one with Charmin Super Mega Roll. Our longest lasting roll, guaranteed to fit. For us, long-lasting Super Mega Roll is an everlasting favorite. We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
The Ford Summer Sales Event is in full swing.
It's kind of a secret beach. Discovered a couple summers back.
Awesome. You have arrived at your destination. So has everyone else.
I guess the secret is up.
Take on summer right with Ford, America's best-selling brand. Now with summer's hottest offer. Get 0% for 72 months, plus an additional $1,000 on top of your trade-in. Or get $4,000 cash back on a Focus, Fusion, or Escape. That's $4,000 cash back. Our biggest rebate of the year.
For today, tomorrow, or whenever you need us, you deserve a Citadel.
The president has had almost 24 hours to review the Russia sanctions legislation. Has he decided if he's going to sign that?
We're going to see what that looks like before we make a final decision. But I can tell you that the White House, the president, and the entire administration, as we've said many times before, strongly supports sanctions against Russia, Iran, and North Korea.
Joining us now, Ambassador Wendy Sherman, former Undersecretary of State and now a senior counselor at Albright Stonebridge Group. She's also an NBC News and MSNBC Global Affairs contributor. Ambassador Sherman, I just want to point out to the audience that everything that moves through Congress has normally is accompanied by a letter from the White House saying what the White House's position is on everything that moves through Congress, including President will veto X or Y. To be at this stage of the sanctions bill and to have the White House not be able to say the president will sign or veto this is extraordinary, but in the mountain of extraordinary things coming out of the White House, these are the kinds of things that get ignored.
Well, indeed, it's called a Statement of Administration Position, better known as a SAP.
Yes.
Seems to be apropos for the moment.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting your promo coming into this, talking about the Russians saying this is going to destroy the relationship. I think that happened when they tried to destroy our election. I know Sergei Ryabkov quite well. He was my counterpart when I was undersecretary. We did Syria chemical weapons together. We did the Iran negotiation together. And you know, in the midst of the Iran negotiation, Ukraine happened. And we sanctioned the hell out of Russia, and it didn't destroy the relationship, and it didn't destroy the negotiation. I think what Congress is doing is exactly right. I hope the president signs it, and if he doesn't, I hope Chairman Royce is good for his word, and I believe he is, and it will be overridden.
And the point you just made about these sanctions being imposed and activated during a negotiation over Iran, where you're trying to hold Russia as close to you as you possibly can, but at the same time, you dealt with that other issue, and so there is always hope for continued positive dealing with Russia wherever possible.
Well, you know, countries do what's in their interests. And Russia didn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon any more than we wanted Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And so that remained in their interests. Now, what else is in their interest that isn't ours? That remains to be seen. We clearly haven't come to terms on Syria. We haven't come to terms on Ukraine. We haven't come to terms on their aggressive behavior in Europe. We haven't come to terms on what they did in our election, on what they do around cybersecurity.
The way the Washington Post phrased this, the Kremlin coming to the realization that they aren't getting any deliverables from President Trump. Well, if you've made the American president a suspect in a Russian conspiracy, it becomes very difficult for the American president to deliver on Russian interests.
Right. They delivered their ambassador Kislyak back to Moscow. They delivered making Russia really part of our everyday news. You all talk about it every single day because it has become a centerpiece in this administration, one that the president wants to go away, but he doesn't seem to want to do anything to make that happen.
After what would a competent administration do after passage and signing of a sanctions bill?
Well, you know, Putin understands power. He will have some newfound respect for the fact that, in fact, we have followed through. And then you would want to hopefully have an ambassador in Russia. But of course, we are now 6 months into this administration. There is no ambassador to Russia. John Huntsman has now finally been nominated. We don't have an assistant secretary for European affairs at the State Department. We don't have all of the undersecretaries in place. We don't have the team that we need to get the job done. But you would hope that you would maintain dialogue wherever you can and work on those issues of equal importance.
And you have a Secretary of State who's being asked today and will be asked in the future, are you quitting today?
Indeed. Well, I think that Secretary Tillerson tried to tell the world he wasn't leaving anytime soon today. But in fact, he's got a lot in front of him. And he also said that he'll be there until the president decides otherwise. And we've seen what the president's done about the Attorney General. I think it would make me quake in my boots if I were Secretary.
Yeah, so you don't hang a lot of family pictures in your cabinet office if you're in this cabinet. Ambassador Wendy Sherman, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Tonight's last word is next.
Oh, you're not taking these.
Hey. You're not taking those.
Whoa, you're not taking that. Come with me.
You're not taking that.
You're not taking that. You're not taking that. Mama, taking the Subaru.
Don't be late. Even when we're not there to keep them safe, our Subaru Outback will be.
Love. That's what makes a Subaru a Subaru.
We needed to hire someone, but it was really tough finding people that had the right experience.
I was spending half my day just reading resumes.
To hire great people, go to ZipRecruiter.com and post to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with one click. Then easily select the best candidates from one list.
I'm seeing a lot more candidates with the right experience.
We have gotten consistently better results from ZipRecruiter than anywhere else.
Over 1 million businesses have already used ZipRecruiter. Try it for free today at ZipRecruiter.com/star.
Introducing Olay Duo Body Cleanser for the never-before-seen two-sided clean. Just add water. One side deeply exfoliates, the other gently smooths. And a flexible body cleanser inside lathers for a close, complete clean. Just hang your duo to dry after each use for day after day of touchably soft skin. Find your duo in the body wash aisle. Available in Olay, Old Spice, and Ivory.
I have lived on this street for 64 years. Broad daylight, they broke into the front glass door, stole whatever they could get their fingers on. I need a home security system. I need something for protection.
It's Shaq and Jamie, ma'am.
My heart's going blah, 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 blah,
Get you some rings and make your home safer.
Shaq and I just put this up for you. Hey, Shaq, what are you doing there?
Now you have your Ring doorbells in the front, your floodlight cams in the back.
I love making neighborhoods safe. Always home, baby.
Chances are, the last time you got a home loan, you got robbed. I know. I got a loan 20 years ago, and I got robbed. That's why I started Lending Tree, the only place you can compare up to 5 real offers side by side for free. It's like shopping for hotels online, but our average customer can save $20,000. At Lending Tree, you know you're getting the best deal. So take the power back and come to LendingTree.com. Because at Lending Tree, when banks compete, you win.
Nothing more important to me than my vacation. So when I need to book a hotel, I want someone who makes it easy to find what I want. Booking.com gets it. I want their price match. I know I'm getting the best price every time. Come on, Gary!
Your vacation is very important. That's why Booking.com makes finding the right hotel for the right price easy. Visit Booking.com now to find out why we're booking. Yeah.
Tough on the administration.
Why would he do something so catastrophic in terms of our security?
Love for the Constitution. We can thank the founding fathers for their wisdom. Tough on secrecy.
There continues to be a whole lot of smoke.
Love for democracy.
So far, it is us as American citizens, it is us in the press who are connecting the dots on this story.
Tough love. Administered nightly, midnight 7 to 11 on MSNBC. Okay, I want you to listen very carefully to Georgia Republican Congressman Buddy Carter, who recommends an action here that I don't understand. I've never heard of what he's recommending. I don't know if it's a Georgia thing or a Republican House of Representatives thing, something they do in the gym. I don't know. If you understand it, please explain it to me on Twitter, @Lawrence, after the show. Listen carefully. Here it is.
Let me tell you, somebody needs to go over there to that Senate and snatch a knot in their ass. I'm telling you, it has gotten to the point where how can you say I voted for this last year, but I'm not going to vote for it this year? This is extremely frustrating for those of us who have put so much into this effort.
Snatch, I have no idea. I have no idea what he just said. That's tonight's last word. The 11th hour with Brian Williams is next.
Tonight, the Trump Sessions drama continues with more presidential tweets aimed at the Attorney General. And at this hour, is the AG safe in his job or closer to being fired? A new report tonight says Trump is already looking for how he can replace him when Congress conveniently leaves town. Plus, could Donald Trump's tax returns be critical to the Russia investigation? I'll ask a member of Senate Judiciary who thinks they might be. The 11th hour on a Wednesday night begins now. And good evening once again from our NBC News headquarters here in New York. Day 188 of the still young Trump administration and day 7 of the president's public humiliation of his own attorney general. Today's offensive was launched again from the president's cell phone. Trump asked why Sessions did not fire the acting FBI director, trying to tie him to Jim Comey and Hillary Clinton. It comes after days of attacks in which Trump has called Sessions very weak, referred to him as beleaguered, said he was very disappointed in Sessions. Tonight we have some new reporting from the Washington Post saying Trump is talking privately about the idea of a recess appointment, waiting until Congress leaves town on summer vacation to replace Sessions. quoting here, still raging over Sessions' recusal from the Justice Department's escalating Russia investigation. Trump has been talking privately, not so privately anymore, about how he might replace Sessions and possibly sidestep Senate oversight. 4 people familiar with the issue said. 2 of those people, however, described Trump as musing about the idea rather than outlining a plan of action. And the New York Times tonight reports from sources that White House aides, including Priebus and Bannon, believe they have talked Trump down from firing Sessions, but, quote, his anger was deep, they added, and nothing was certain when it came to the volatile president. The Times indicates it's Trump family members who want Sessions out as they've become ensnared in this Russia investigation. Tonight, Vice President Mike Pence was asked about the Sessions matter on Fox News.
I think the president's been very candid that he was disappointed with the Attorney General's decision to recuse himself and to not know about his intention to do so before he was confirmed as the Attorney General. The Washington way is to talk behind people's backs, but that's not President Donald Trump's approach. One of the great things about this president is you always know where you stand. He said, we'll see what happens in the future. But at least the American people know, and every member of the cabinet can know that you'll always know where you stand with President Trump.
And at the White House press briefing, Sarah Huckabee Sanders reiterated Trump's disappointment and added the 2 men have not spoken this week, even though it's important to point out Sessions was in the West Wing down the hall from the Oval Office today, around the same time the president attacked him on Twitter.
I think the president's been very clear about where he is. He's obviously disappointed, but also wants the Attorney General to continue to focus on the things that the Attorney General does.
Has he spoken to the president this week? Do you know when the last time the 2 of them spoke was?
I don't believe they've spoken this week. I'm not sure on the time frame.
If he is so frustrated and so disappointed in him, why doesn't he just ask him to resign or fire him? Why does he continue to just tweet about him instead?
Look, you can be disappointed in someone, but still want them to continue to do their job, and that's where they are.
Continue in that job?
I think that I made clear last week that if there comes a point he doesn't, he'll make that decision.
Today started with the president catching everyone off guard, not the first time. This morning, though, he wrote on Twitter, after consultation with my generals and military experts, please be advised that the United States government will not accept or allow. And let's stop it right there and look at that, because for 9 minutes, that's all we saw. Imagine working at the Pentagon and that's all you saw before the president went on to the next line. He went on to say he was blocking transgender individuals from serving in any capacity in the U.S. military. This major shift in policy came as our Secretary of Defense is on vacation and came without a plan to implement it. No paperwork has been forwarded from the White House to the Pentagon. When reporters asked how this change would work, here's a sampling of what they heard.
That's something that the Department of Defense and the White House will have to work together as implementation takes place and is done so lawfully. Again, the implementation policy is going to be something that the White House and the Department of Defense have to work together to lawfully determine. The decision is based on a military decision. It's not meant to be anything more than that. Once again, this was a decision based on what was best for the military, and they're going to work together with the Department of Defense to lawfully implement it. As I answered before, this was a decision about military readiness.
So on that note, let's bring in tonight's starting panel, shall we? NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell is here with us tonight. Politics reporter for the New York Times, Jeremy Peters, co-author of today's front page article, In Trump's World, Very Weak Sessions, Twist in Wind. And Michael Schmidt, who covers national security at the Times. Welcome to you all. Mr. Schmidt, you're going to get the first question because you cover justice and then some. I suppose you're getting asked this a lot. It may be unanswerable. Is Sessions safe? If so, for how long?
Well, I think for at least for now, he looks like he is safe. It looks like the folks around the president were able to convince him that this would be a very, very bad thing to do. I think the president has seen that he, the huge fallout from the Comey firing and the impact of that. And I think that he's afraid of what could happen. You know, certainly the people around him are afraid of what could happen if he were to fire Sessions and the implications of that. Because I think there's a real fear that the Republican Congress, which has largely supported him, may actually, you know, back off that support and may really create some problems for the president.
Michael saying nothing about the fact that it would match the storyline investigators are trying to prove.
Well, that is true. I mean, the question here is whether, you know, as we've seen with Comey, is the question is was the president trying to obstruct the investigation? Would the president be trying to obstruct it by getting rid of Sessions? That would certainly play into that narrative. And this is, you know, something that Mueller has looked at. Mueller has looked at, you know, has begun to look at this issue, and it is the reason why Mueller exists. You know, if Comey had not been fired and it had not come out that the president had asked Comey to end the Flynn investigation, we wouldn't be in this situation. The president wouldn't be as upset as he is with Sessions. The president is really, really disappointed by this. He does not understand why Sessions did this, and I think the president finally understands the impact that Mueller could have on him. Mueller has an enormous amount of power. He's going to look at everything in Trump world, and I think that there's some real deep concerns at the White House about that.
To Mr. Peters, I used to know just two things about recess appointments, and fact check me here to see if they are still true. Number one, it's good until the next Congress comes into town, and number two, we haven't had many full-on recesses in the modern era last couple of years. There's a way to keep the Senate minimally in session, maybe one or two members present. That way, most of the Senate's on summer break, but this can't happen. Is that correct?
That's correct. From my understanding of the Senate rules, Brian, I think that what we've never seen before and what kind of leaves an open question as to how this might unfold is you've never had a Republican president and a Republican Congress together at such a tumultuous time where there is the question of the possibility of a recess appointment. Now, this assumes that Republicans would somehow try to get in the way of Sessions' replacement. And it also assumes that there will be a Sessions replacement, which, as my colleague Michael was just saying, we think right now maybe that's not the case, that maybe this has blown over. And from what I'm hearing as well, there have been senior aides in the White House telling the president that firing Jeff Sessions would be a terrible idea because of the rupture that it would cause with the conservative base of the Republican Party. Sessions was a validator for a lot of Donald Trump's warier supporters. He was emblematic of the kind of conservative nationalism that eventually would win Donald Trump the presidency. So to jettison him and humiliate him in such a public way has been a real problem on the right for Trump. And I think that for now you're going to see him probably ease up a little bit, and given that you're up one day and down the next, you're riding high in April, down in May is always a situation with Donald Trump. I could see this repairing itself.
And Andrea duly noted these two brethren are with the New York Times. The Times story broke late tonight. Earlier tonight, the Washington Post version of this was 4 sources still telling them this was possible.
And I think that this is the confusion of covering Donald Trump, because he is impulsive. He follows his own lead. He doesn't listen to his lawyer's advice. And I think if he gets annoyed, more annoyed if that's possible, with Jeff Sessions, I wouldn't bar anything, because first of all, if Congress leaves, and I think that there is a complicating factor here on the recess appointments because of exactly what they were just alluding to, what Jeremy was just saying, that both houses are controlled by Republicans, and usually a house in control keeps that Senate in by having someone babysit for gavel down for 30 seconds or 2 minutes each time, and that we've seen that happen fairly often. I would not rule it out, and he could also get around all of this by firing Mr. Rosenstein and appointing a more complicit deputy AG. So he's got options.
Then we get into a summer more reminiscent of the mid-'70s than 2017. Mr. Schmidt, again, another thing interesting about covering this crowd are the bedfellows created, sometimes short-term for the task at hand. Tonight we are led to believe it is Messrs. McGahn, Bannon, and Priebus who are on the talk him down team, and it's the Trump family caught up in the Russia investigation themselves who are on the get rid of Sessions team.
My sense on the Sessions issue is that everyone is sort of on the same page. I think it's pretty clear to them the impact that this would have, and that everyone sort of understands that. We've seen so many different issues with this White House where indeed they do break down sort of on the Republican line and the line of folks from New York and people in the more Democratic line. But I think this one is pretty crystal clear, and they're trying to avoid a situation like Comey. I mean, if they could go back and put Comey's the toothpaste back in the Comey jar, I don't think he would have fired Comey because of what it has led to in the form of Mueller.
And Jeremy, you alluded to this earlier, but proof that this is no ordinary time. Chuck Grassley, Judiciary Committee Chairman, tweeted tonight, we have it and we'll put it up on the screen, in kind of Twitter shorthand. Everybody in D.C. should be warned that the agenda for the Judiciary Committee is set for the rest of 2017. Judges first, no punctuation, sub-cabinet second / AG, no way. That is being taken as the senator's way of saying, don't you dare touch Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, exactly right. And there's a certain Senate camaraderie. Let's not forget Jeff Sessions was a senator for 2 decades before he went over to Donald Trump's cabinet, so they are certainly protective of him there. But, this is more than just about politics. As Michael was saying, this is about legality, too. And the only one who seems confused here about whether or not it was proper for Sessions to recuse himself is Donald Trump. Donald Trump's closest supporters, Rudy Giuliani among them, have said, yes, it absolutely was the right thing for Sessions to recuse himself from an investigation that he was going to be a subject of. So, if Trump were to fire him, this would not only create, a big problem with Trump voters who saw Sessions as kind of the conscience of this administration, the conservative conscience of this administration, but also cause a huge problem on Capitol Hill. And potentially open the floodgates for Republicans to start breaking with the president in a way that they have so far been very reluctant to do, Brian.
Andrew?
Well, the irony here is that of all the cabinet members so far, perhaps also including the EPA.
He's been getting the job done.
He's getting the job done the way Donald Trump wants him to get it done. He's been tough on immigration. He's been tough on sanctuary cities. He's been tough on voting rights. He has cut back all kinds of issues that are near and dear to the heart of Donald Trump and to the conservative base. So he's been a very effective operator here.
And I have to ask you about the tweets on transgender service in the military. BuzzFeed had a piece tonight that said for someone at the Pentagon that was a heart-stopping 9 minutes. It was clear this was coming out of the White House. No one had any paperwork to back this up. And
well, let me give you some context here. Let me set the table. They had a principals committee meeting today on Afghanistan. They are stymied because of disagreements, important disagreements among cabinet secretaries, Tillerson and Mattis on one side, people in the White House the other, on whether to send more troops. The president doesn't want to, so they're trying to work around that. There are some signs that North Korea is preparing another missile launch tonight, tomorrow, in the next couple of days. And a new intelligence assessment saying that they got it wrong, that in fact Kim Jong-un is making very rapid progress, cutting 2 years off the lead time to miniaturize a warhead and be able to get it to re-enter the atmosphere. An alarming state of affairs on that front. You've got big plans about ISIS in Syria. You've got this dispute between the Saudis and the Qataris over our biggest air base, which affects our biggest air base in Qatar. I mean, there are so many foreign policy issues, and he's tweeting about transgender soldiers, men and women in the military who are performing, 15,000 people performing all sorts of critical activities in a volunteer army. There is no plan. The generals were not consulted. There's no plan at all for how to muster them out if that's going to be the effect of some executive order, which we have not yet seen.
And Maggie Haberman tweeted that the White House loved today's briefing, meaning by that, yes, this was something with a real human cost and something that has to be debated and discussed, but it was also a giant daily distraction.
Yeah, the briefing was short and sweet, and there wasn't a lot to it, and there weren't a lot of answers to these questions. The transgender issue is incredibly complicated at the Pentagon. It's something that the Obama administration spent an enormous amount of time looking at. They figured out how much it would cost. It's actually not a big cost. It's just, about $3 or $4 million a year more for a military that spends over $500 billion. And this is something that the Obama administration really worked a lot of time on. And now that there's this announcement that it's not coming out, for the press, there was not a lot of answers about what would happen with that. And, the press was certainly not satisfied with that.
And Jeremy, last word to you. In a volunteer service in the modern era, you don't hear often who shouldn't serve, who shouldn't volunteer to serve their country.
Exactly, and the Obama administration went far, not just in opening the military up to transgender individuals, but combat roles to all women. And this administration seems intent on rolling back just who can serve in the armed forces in a pretty significant way, and in a way that is another example of how President Trump is insistent on dismantling pieces of Barack Obama's legacy.
Our thanks to everybody for working late tonight. Andrea Mitchell, Jeremy Peters, Michael Schmidt for starting us off. And I know we don't get to see Andrea here in New York as much as we'd like to on the late shift. And so our thanks tonight go to Seth Meyers, who had the good sense to have Andrea on tonight as a guest on Late Night. We have further scheduled it so you can see it. So when the 11th hour is over, switch over, as they say, to your local NBC station. Because it's Andrea, it's worth it to check your local listings. Thanks again to our panel. And coming up for us, the new head of the White House Communications Shop may want to let Trump be Trump, but what are the president's lawyers saying about that? Some answers when we continue. The 11th hour is just getting started.
You totaled your brand new car. Nobody's hurt, but there will still be pain. It comes when your insurance company says they'll only pay 3/4 of what it takes to replace it. What are you supposed to do? Drive 3/4 of a car? Now, if you had Liberty Mutual new car replacement, you'd get your whole car back. I guess they don't want you driving around on 3 wheels. Smart.
With Liberty Mutual new car replacement, we'll replace the full value of your car. Liberty stands with you. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
With the TouchNote app, you can send your favorite photos as real postcards direct from your smartphone.
Hey, Mom, Sophie's first picture of you. How flattering. Love, Emma.
Simply choose your photo, write a message, and tap send. It's so quick and easy, and we mail the very next day. Go ahead, surprise someone you love. Download the app now or visit touchnote.com.
I enjoy the fresher things in life. Fresh towels, fresh soaps, and of course, TripAdvisor's freshest, lowest prices. So, if you're anything like me, you'll want to check TripAdvisor. We now instantly compare prices from over 200 booking sites to find you the lowest price on the hotel you want. Go on, try something fresh. TripAdvisor, the latest reviews, the lowest prices.
Steve was born to move. Over the course of 9 days, he walks 26.2 miles. That's a marathon. Because he chooses to walk whenever he can. And he does it with support from Dr. Scholl's. Only Dr. Scholl's has massaging gel insoles that provide all-day comfort to keep him feeling more energized. So he even has the energy to take the long way home. Keep it up, Steve. Dr. Scholl's, born to move.
Terrorists called Unabomber is planning to blow up an airliner sometime during the next 6 days.
Vic Kaczynski's got an IQ of 168. An operation of this scale is unprecedented.
He's been outsmarting us the whole time.
On Unabomber, an 8-episode event starts Tuesday at 9 on Discovery and the Discovery Go app.
Uh-oh, it's back.
It's terror on the tummy time!
Persistent diarrhea, stomach pain, and bloating.
Time's up, big man!
You've tried everything, but no matter what you do, your stomach issues just keep coming back.
Party's over! Ooh, we're going up.
But there's a diagnosis that may not have been considered. Learn more at whatamIWrestlingWith.com.
doesn't break.
We've seen the president lawyer up.
The splinters in different directions.
White House senior staffers playing defense on yet another Russia story.
Our trusted NBC News journalists will guide you through every one. So wherever the story goes,
If there's news, we'll bring it right to you.
you'll be right there with it.
Welcome back to the 11th hour on another busy night. Thanks to the Washington Post tonight, we are learning more about what the president's lawyers are advising him when it comes to his comments, at least, on Jeff Sessions and Bob Mueller. Quote, several lawyers around Trump have been urging the president to stop his saber rattling against Sessions and Mueller, adding that his comments send a signal to Mueller that the president's trying to shut down or curtail the investigation, as if he does have something to hide. Well, with us tonight to talk about all this, Jill Wine-Banks is back with us, one of the special prosecutors during the Watergate scandal, former general counsel of the U.S. Army. Michael Crowley is back with us, senior foreign affairs correspondent for Politico. And, of course, Jeremy Batch, former chief of staff at CIA, DOD, and former chief counsel for House Intel. Jill, you can start off. What do you make of the legal advice the president is getting?
That is good advice. I don't expect that he's going to follow it any more than he has followed any of the other advice he's gotten. He's making a mistake with all his tweets. It's almost like Wag the Dog, the movie, where he's trying to divert attention from what is going on in this legitimate investigation, which is anything but a witch hunt.
Do you think he's acting guilty or innocent?
He is clearly acting guilty. If he doesn't have anything to hide, why isn't he going to just make complete and full disclosure, give out all the documents that he could possibly give out, and just answer all the questions, let all his people testify? He has to be worried right now, who's going to be the first to flip on him? Is it going to be Paul Manafort, who clearly is in legal jeopardy for a number of potential crimes? Who is it going to be? Is it already Flynn? Is he already cooperating with the government? I don't know who it is, but someone probably is, and that may be why he's so worried and so anxious to shut this investigation down. And I would have never thought I would have supported Attorney General Sessions. He does not stand for anything I believe in, except in
what is going on, Beverage fam? So, you know what, I think this is going to be our last video. It's been a long year. This is our 99th episode. Please stop the 27th. Stop the